Chapter 151. The war begins. Carl directly closed the system panel and then merged it with Lu Xing's template. This template was definitely one of the templates he wanted to fuse the most. As the system page showed that the fusion was in progress, a warm current appeared inside his body. All of Lu Xing's skills gradually appeared in Carl's mind, and two rings gradually appeared on his fingers, namely the Black Emperor's ring and the White Emperor's ring. There are 8 elements stored in this ring. A trace of joy flashed in his eyes, and he seemed a little impatient. Wano Kuni, before Carl arrived, had always adhered to the policy of isolation from the country. It is still the mysterious secret room, which is located underground in Wanakuna's capital city. It used to be General Wanakuna's private meeting room. The decoration in the secret room is simple and gorgeous. "Have you received the message?" a deep voice sounded in the secret room. Of course, after all, the country is not closed off now. Another voice was slightly younger. He was holding the latest newspaper of the news agency in his hand and looking at the people in front of him. The people who said this were a bit regretful. They, Wano Kuni, had always adhered to the policy of isolation from the country. They did not expect to meet a person like Carl, who would forcefully establish Wano Kuni as a country. But they don't have enough strength to resist, so they don't know whether this thing is good or bad. We can't act rashly until the news about that person comes. The first voice sounded again. The voice was full of majesty and determination, showing that he occupied a dominant position among the crowd. Yes, he is too strong. Another voice came out at this time. The voice was filled with awe and concern. Everyone here also knows Carl's strength, so no one dares to take the lead when they are not completely sure. Wait a little longer. The mysterious voice sighed. He knew that they could only wait now, wait for more news, and wait for a better time. After all, the initiative is not in their hands now. As the secret room lost its sound, just after a while, several people covered in black robes walked out of the secret room and walked to different directions. 2 days later, a sound came from the sea at this time. Finally reached. Marshall Hill and the others hurriedly and slowly arrived at the Valley of the Gods within 2 days. Looking at the Valley of the Gods in the distance, Sengoku couldn't help but sigh. Such a beautiful island may no longer exist. Kong stood on the bow. But it's all worth it, as long as the rocks can be eliminated. Go to the island quickly and set up a defensive formation. Marshall Hill walked on the deck and gave orders to the vice admirals. They must deploy marine in the first half of the Valley of the Gods as soon as possible. As for the second half, that is celestial, a place used by dragons to worship. They all knew that what was coming next would be a tough battle, and every soldier had a determined look on his face. 2 hours passed as Marine made urgent and slow deployments. Suddenly a Marine soldier looked up and wiped his sweat, and saw a large shadow approaching in the distance. What is that? His words attracted the attention of his companions. He also looked up, but his eyes were sharper, and at a glance he saw a fleet of ships flying in the sky coming from a distance. He turned around quickly, put his hands to his mouth and shouted, "Rock's pirate is coming." This roar caused everyone present to stop what they were doing and look up at the distant sky. A huge fleet ushered in from the distant horizon, forming a large dark cloud and drifting towards the Valley of the Gods. This fleet was none other than the Rock's pirate. Marine actually arrived only 2 hours earlier than Rock's pirate. If it weren't for Garp's reminder, they might have arrived late, right? The consequences of arriving late are unimaginable. On board the Zebek, Rox stood on the bow of the ship, and Carl stood on his left. Next to him were Newgate, Golden Lion, Linlin and others, the captains of each division. Ha ha ha. It seems Marine has prepared the welcome ceremony. Rock's gloomy voice sounded, bringing a bit of shock. Everyone has already turned their attention to the ground. Well, Linlin chuckled softly, then took off the Emperor's blade from his hat. Marine is quite well prepared. Gia ha ha ha. The Golden Lion suddenly came out, blocking Linlin's sight. Give me the first move. Golden Lion pulled out his twin swords, Deadwood and Sakura 10. The lion cuts thousands of bones. This was also a signature move during the Golden Lion era, and it was powerful enough to easily cut through mountains and cut off seas. The huge sword energy was like a strong wind, flying towards the Marines in the Valley of Gods with the momentum of destroying everything. Wherever the sword energy passed, there was a harsh roar, and the ground began to tremble slightly. At the same time, after Golden Lion finished this attack, it slowly landed the fleet on the sea only a few nautical miles away from the Valley of the Gods, and sailed towards the Valley of the Gods. Seeing the imminent attack in front of him, Kong grabbed his cloak and threw it aside. Using both legs, he flew towards the slash in the sky, Kong Fall. He suddenly punched out his right fist, directly shattering the sword energy in front of him. Ha ha ha, Hill, it's been such a long time. Ah, Rox, I really don't want to see you here. Rox and Hill's eyes met in the air. Just when everyone thought the two of them were going to talk, Rox unleashed his Conqueror's Haki. Suddenly, an extremely oppressive momentum burst out from Rox. Black and red ripples spread outward from the center, impacting crazily outward. This majestic momentum was like a strong wind, making everyone gasp. Not able to breathe, people on both sides fell in an instant. Quick, drag the unconscious soldier to the back. The still conscious Marine Vice Admiral ordered the Marine who was still standing on the field to drag the fainted soldier to the back. Otherwise, the aftermath of the battle would be enough to make these unconscious Marine soldiers die inexplicably. If this is how they died, wouldn't it be a tragedy? I believe no one would choose such a way to die. Hill's face became serious as he also unleashed his Conqueror's Haki. The two conquerors collided together, and the surrounding air and heaven and earth became distorted. The two black and red semicircular spherical objects lying upside down on the ground were even more ferocious. I didn't expect that Marine Marshal is also the owner of Conqueror's Haki. When the two Hakis collided, Carl was still in the mood to chat with Linlin. Feeling that something was wrong in the atmosphere, Carl also released his Conqueror's Haki. This Conqueror's Haki was no weaker than Rox's. Since we have already arrived at this final battlefield, there is no need to deliberately hide our Conqueror's Haki. Rox was a little shocked. He didn't expect that Carl's Conqueror's Haki was as powerful as his. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. It seemed that Carl's ambition was not small. Chapter 152. Rushing to the Valley of Gods immediately afterwards, Golden Lion Shiki, Newgate, and Linlin also rushed to release their own Conqueror's Haki. Their Conqueror's Haki joined the battlefield like a violent hurricane. Kong and Sengoku also released their own Conqueror's Haki. Multiple strands of Conqueror's Haki collided together, forming 7 large and small semicircular spheres. The collision of these 7 Conqueror's Haki shook the entire battlefield, and the momentum of both sides reached its peak. It's so scary. Borsellino is the leader of the Young Pioneers team. He took the lead and stood on the bow of the Qinglong. Is this the power of a top powerhouse? It was also the first time for Davis to see so many Conqueror's Haki being released at the same time. It's really shocking. This is also the first time for me to see such a scene. Next to Dafu stood a man wearing ancient armor. You should call me Yu Jin. This is a battle between the most powerful men in the world. There will be far fewer opportunities to see it in the future. Yu Jin's eyes flashed with excitement. Rebirth has come. He also wanted to experience the elegance of a strong man. I will be imprisoned in the end, and I am willing to go through fire and water for the Lux family. As time went by, the Conqueror's Haki on the field continued to fight, seriously affecting the island terrain in the first half of the Valley of the Gods, and Marines' carefully laid out defensive positions were directly wiped out. Under the influence of the 7 Conqueror's Haki, even some vice admirals fell to the ground, let alone their Marine soldiers. Sure enough, after cleaning up the trash fish, the scene will look much better. Rock's eyes widened, and a breathtaking red light flashed in his pupils. He suddenly increased the output of his Conqueror's Haki, directly breaking the circle formed by everyone's Conqueror's Haki. Several other people also silently took back Conqueror's Haki. This shocking Conqueror's Haki confrontation made everyone present feel the pressure from the top powerhouse. So, the battle has begun. Rox announced loudly, his voice echoing in the battlefield. This also means that this peak showdown is about to begin in the Valley of the Gods to determine the fate of the world. In the first half of the Valley of the Gods, the two hostile forces on the plain began to charge each other. An earth-shattering battle is about to begin. This battle is also one of the top battles in the pirate world. Both sides are shouting with their weapons raised high. The first to charge was the pirate camp. They were dressed in various colors of clothing and had 5 flowered 8-gate weapons. Their faces were filled with ferocious smiles, and their eyes were filled with the smell of blood. They shouted Captain Rocks and headed towards Marines rush into position. Immediately afterwards, the Marine camp began to move forward slowly. Wearing white uniforms and holding sharp swords, they formed an insurmountable torrent of steel. Their steps were uniform, like a moving castle, slowly moving toward the sea. The thief rushed away. The two sides were charging faster and faster, and the distance was getting closer and closer. The air was filled with the smell of gunpowder. Both the pirate and Marine felt the tension, their heartbeats accelerated, their blood boiled, and their breathing became rapid. Chang chang chang. Dang dang dang. Almost in the blink of an eye, soldiers from both sides fought fiercely, fighting each other and clashing swords. The blood stained the ground under his feet in an instant, and the sound of wailing echoed in the air. From this moment on, soldiers or pirates will fall every minute, and lives will pass away. Jia ha ha ha. I'll go first, slash wave. The golden lion waved his swords, and huge sword energy roared out, pointing directly at the Marine camp, and then he rushed towards the battlefield at the forefront. Whoosh! Boom! A sword energy came from the horizon, directly blocking the golden lion's slash wave one by one. Pirates, don't be too arrogant. 4 people came down from the sky. They were the air marshal who came from the Red Line to support him, Sko, and the 3 Admiral Corsesi, Casa and Udir. Looks like we're not too late. Stop talking nonsense and come on. The golden lion didn't have time to chat with him, so he rushed towards Sko with the dead wood and Sakura 10. He was extremely fast, like a bolt of lightning, rushing in front of Cisco in the blink of an eye. Clang! Sko is also a master of swordsmanship. The 2 swords kept colliding in the air, and sparks appeared in the air. Their skills are very high, and every confrontation arouses fierce sparks. It's our turn. Carl turned his head and looked at Linlin, Newgate and others beside him, and rushed towards Sengoku at the lead. Well, there is really no way. Linlin rushed towards Zephyr standing aside with the Emperor blade. Except for Hill, Kong and Rocks, everyone else found their opponents, Garp against Newgate, Sengoku against Carl, Zephyr against Linlin, Sko vs Golden Lion, Corsesi vs Redfield, Casa vs Silver Axe, Udir vs Ochaku. The battlefield was divided into 7 areas, dedicated to the admiral-level experts. They began to fight with each other. The pirate tribesmen and marine soldiers gave them enough space to avoid being affected. Remember what I said to you? Davis was still a little worried before leaving, so he solemnly said it. He met the oncoming Tritus, Sengoku's deputy. Noti, Fields and others also fought with Garp and Zephyr's deputies Dill and Bogart. Needless to say, the rest of the matter went without saying. Led by Borsellino and a group of young pioneers, they rushed towards the oncoming dozens of marine vice-admirals, and a chaotic battle was imminent. Big Buddha shockwave. Sengoku saw Carl rushing towards him and directly transformed into the Big Buddha state. How dare you try your best to master a small skill? Thunder half-moon slash. Carl's right hand appeared out of thin air and Fang Tian Hua Ji 10 meters away. Swung Fang Tian Hua Ji, drew a gorgeous arc in midair and swept directly towards Sengoku. Not to be outdone, Sengoku raised his huge palm and affected Carl's Fang Tian painted halberd. The collision between the two caused a strong shock wave, and the surrounding air made a harsh whistling sound as if it was torn apart. Carl felt the vibration coming from Fang Tian's painted halberd, his palms were numb slightly, and he looked at Sengoku with excitement. Sengoku, your strength has improved a lot in the past few years. Sengoku looked at the cracks in his palms and looked solemnly at Carl in front of him. You're not far behind. Whirlwind. Carl rotated the Fang Tian painted halberd in the air, forming an arc-shaped slash towards Sengoku. Sengoku did not speak, but waved his huge golden fist and attacked Carl's Fang Tian painted halberd. Buzz. A huge collision sound emitted harsh infrasound waves. The battle between Carl and Sengoku became more and more intense. Every time they fought, there was an earth-shattering sound, and the entire battlefield was shaken by the fight between these admiral-level warriors. At the same time, the battle between Davis and Tretis was also in full swing. They each used their own unique 8-level punches and golden light spells to try to defeat the other. Noti, Fields and others also fought against Marines' deputies with all their strength, while those led by Borsellino started a chaotic battle with dozens of Marine generals, some 1 against 1, and some 2 against 1. Each of them used the special skills they had learned in the past 3 years to try to fight their way out of the Marine Vice Admiral camp. Their battle was extremely fierce. Chapter 153. Roger's arrival. Boom boom boom. 30 or 40 nautical miles away from the Valley of Gods. The Oro Jackson is slowly approaching the Valley of the Gods. Roger stood at the bow of the boat, his eyes were deep, and there was an inexplicable aura in his eyes. It looks like they have already surrendered. Roger looked in the direction of the Valley of the Gods. There were roars and flashes of light, and it was obvious that a fierce battle was taking place. Jabba, go directly from the island to the back. Roger gave the order. He decided to bypass the battlefield in front and land from the back of the island. After Jabba heard the order, he quickly turned the ship's bow and headed towards the back of the Valley of the Gods. What? Rayleigh also came to Roger's side, eyes full of doubts. Isn't the purpose of our coming here just to stop the Rock's pirate? Why should we go to the back of the island? Ha ha ha. Roger patted Rayleigh on the shoulder, his tone full of temptation. You've come, you can't leave empty-handed. There should be a lot of good things in the Valley of Gods, right? Roger naturally knew that the Valley of the Gods was an island used by pilgrims to offer sacrifices. There must be countless treasures and secrets hidden on it, and there might even be historical texts they were looking for. This is the secret to finding the final guide. They had arrived at Shui Shenxing Island a year ago, but after arriving at Mercury Ferry Island, the pointer kept spinning around and was not fixed at all, so they determined that Shui Shenxing Island was not the last island at all. They had to walk again from the source to find the real last island. In the process, they discovered historical texts. Roger felt that the secret should exist in historical texts, so he has been looking for read historical texts. Besides, I always feel like there is something there that is attracting me to move forward. Roger's eyes shone with a strange light, and he felt that a mysterious power from within the Valley of Gods was constantly calling him, making him feel like a cat scratching his head, unable to resist. The Oro Jackson sailed slowly towards the rear of the Valley of the Gods. Okay, I'll listen to you. Rayleigh crossed his hands after hearing this. He didn't have any objections. Anyway, no matter whether you land in the Valley of the Gods from the front or from the back, sooner or later you will have to fight the Rock's pirate. It's just a time difference. That's all. Even now, they must be ready to participate in the battle at all times. After arriving at the Valley of Gods, a battle may happen in the next second, so you must be vigilant. And judging from the fierce battle on the Valley of the Gods, the Admiral-level experts alone were of multiple levels, and there were only 4 Admiral-level experts on their ship. But no matter what, their power is definitely the last straw that breaks the balance. Jabba listened to the constant roaring on the island, his eyes full of excitement and anticipation. The fighting on the island was quite intense. After he adjusted the direction of the ship behind the island, he came to Roger's side. Roger's crew members are all young men in their 20s. They are extremely energetic every day, but they cannot take action against the people on the same ship. It is really pitiful that they can experience a real battle. Roger looked into the distance, his eyes shining with wisdom. It's good to fight. If we fight, we can fish in troubled waters. Ha ha ha. The laughter was full of pride. He also knows that only in the midst of chaos can they find the best moment to enter and stop the Rock's pirate. The most important thing, of course, is that Rox cannot be allowed to complete his plan. If Rox slaughters all the celestial dragons in the Valley of the Gods and then comes out of the Valley of the Gods unharmed, this incident will cause an uproar in the entire world. The whole sea will be in chaos from now on, but this is actually not the real moment yet. Rayleigh remembered what Newgate said deeply, and luckily, they did not have a direct confrontation with Carl in the past 3 years. Then when will we join? He raised a key question. They must join the battle at the right time. If they join too early, they will inevitably fight against Carl and others. If they join too late, they may miss a big event, and their trip will be in vain. Both Roger and Rayleigh knew that they needed to find the best opportunity to enter the battle to avoid a head-on confrontation with Carl and others, while ensuring that they could successfully stop the Rock's pirate. "Well, it doesn't matter what happens, we have to play anyway." Spencer was sitting on the deck playing mahjong with a few other people. His tone was full of ease and casualness, as if he didn't care about the upcoming battle. But that's right, they are the Roger pirates after all, and their strength is obvious to all across the sea. In New World, apart from not being able to collide head-on with Rock's pirate, they really had no one to fear. The experience of the past 3 years has made them accustomed to various big scenes in the New World. As long as the entire Rock's pirate group is not dispatched, there is no need for the Roger pirates to be afraid. Tell the truth. Sunbelt took over, his face filled with admiration. If it weren't for Carl, we, the Fishmen tribe, wouldn't have been able to stay in that dark seabed for how long. Carl's appearance, although to a certain extent, controls the ship from the Fishmen Island to the New World. But on the other hand, it has indeed benefited the Fishmen clan. Under Carl's leadership, the Fishmen clan has gained a place in the world, and their lives have also been greatly improved. They are no longer the Murlocs living in the darkness of the sea, and because of Carl's blessing, the Murlocs' slave market share is gradually decreasing, and not many people dare to capture the Murlocs as slaves. But this also invisibly increases the price of Murloc slaves. Only the men of celestial dragons will capture some Murlocs from time to time, but they will all face the bloody massacre from Carl. As a fishman from the Fishmen Island, Sunbelt was naturally full of gratitude and admiration for Carl. It was Carl's appearance that enabled his family and even some tribesmen to break away from the shackles of the seabed and see the real sunshine. Spencer and other crew members were also affected by Sunbelt's words. Although they admired Carl somewhat, there was no room for any selfishness in the following battle. Dong dong dong. Nosden walked out of the ship. His huge height was nearly 5 meters. When he walked out, there were muffled sounds on the deck. He was so huge that every step he took seemed to shake the entire ship. "We have arrived." Nosden's voice was as loud as a bell. Everyone stopped talking and turned to look in the direction Nosden pointed. What comes into view is the rear of the Valley of the Gods. It turned out that while they were chatting, the ship had already approached the rear of the Bone of God. Boys, let's move forward," Roger shouted excitedly, and then he took the lead and jumped off the boat. His movements were very agile, and he started running towards the island after landing. Rayleigh shook her head helplessly. How could their captain be so willful? He knew that once Roger decided something, he would not change it easily. "Let's go to the island." Rayleigh gave the order, and the crew took action one after another. They set foot on this mysterious land, the Valley of the Gods. Their purpose is to stop Rocks. Chapter 154, Infiltration. Just as Roger and others were walking towards the Valley of Gods, Jennifer, Smith and Bai Hu had secretly sneaked into the place where the celestial dragons were worshipping. They looked at the map in their hands and nodded, knowing that they had arrived at the most important place and the target location of their operation. "It seems that I am right," Smith said in a low voice. Smith transformed Jennifer and the White Tiger into wallpapers and wandered around the walls of the palace inside the Valley of the Gods. This way, he could avoid being discovered by the guards of the celestial dragons, and he could observe the surrounding environment well and hide easily. "Don't move yet." Jennifer felt the strange atmosphere and walked towards them. The devil fruit of both of them is about to awaken. On the way here, Jennifer would use the painted fruit to leave something behind at every place she passed to explore the surrounding environment. There was a group of guards just now, passing by the place where Jennifer left the painting, so they felt it. None of them said anything, just sticking to the corner and waiting silently. Several people now knew that they had to keep quiet to avoid being discovered by the patrolling guards. If they were discovered by patrolling guards, it would prove that their plan was aborted before it even started. Tap tap tap. Listening to the footsteps coming from far away, a guard of 10 people came from the corner and passed in front of them. They were wearing golden armor, and their footsteps echoed in the silent palace, which was particularly harsh. After the guard walked away, the White Tiger stuck out his head and looked around, his eyes full of vigilance and caution. Bai Hu whispered, his voice full of urgency. We need to find the treasure as soon as possible. There are too many guards here. If they are exposed, it will be very troublesome." The other two people also nodded slightly. These guards changed almost every 2 or 3 minutes, and there was not much time for turnover. If they were not careful, they would be exposed, so they had to find the celestial dragon's treasure trove as soon as possible. The three of them looked at each other and started walking farther away against the wall. They carefully explored every room, trying not to miss anything. At the same time, they became more nervous, fearing that one of them would be accidentally discovered by the guards. Lord Charles Saint, 300 meters away from Jennifer and the other three, a group of guards guarded the celestial dragons and walked towards a treasure house. Their footsteps echoed in the silent fairway, and there were echoes. "The treasure house is just ahead. I'll take you there." The guard's voice was full of flattery. Their duty is to serve the celestial dragons, so they will basically choose to obey the celestial dragons. The Lord Charles Saint in front of him just wanted to pick a devil fruit from the treasure house and feed it to his slave because he felt a little bored. Therefore, the decision to go to the treasure house occurred before the sacrifice. Unfortunately, this sound was heard by Bai Hu, and he stopped moving forward. "Stop! I think I heard that one of the celestial dragons is going to hide the treasure house." Although White Tiger has been transformed into a human form through the blessing of the template, he can also speak, but don't really think of him as a human being. He is still a beast in nature, so the original set has not been discarded. As a tiger, he is born with hearing and smell. Extraordinary, even reaction speed is several times that of ordinary people. Because they have penetrated deep into the celestial dragons, they dare not release observation haki at will, just because they are afraid that the celestial dragons have some means to detect it, so they will undoubtedly expose themselves. After hearing the voice of celestial dragons, there was a hint of surprise in his tone. If he followed the footsteps of celestial dragons, he might be able to find the location of the treasure more safely. "Really? Where is it?" Jennifer and Smith stopped moving forward and looked at the white tiger. Their eyes were filled with anticipation. If they found the celestial dragons, they wouldn't have to wander around this huge maze-like palace like headless flies. "Follow me." Bai Hu took the lead and followed the sound he just heard. Jennifer and Smith looked at each other and started to follow Bai Hu's pace along the corner. They stuck to the wall, making no sound during the action. The two of them followed Bai Hu cautiously. The further they walked inside, the more luxurious the palace became. The pillars, doors, and walls seemed to be made of gold. The gold was so dazzling that Jennifer and Smith couldn't help but be shocked by the wealth of celestial dragons. They really couldn't imagine what kind of treasures there would be in the treasure house. After several people turned a few corners, they finally saw the celestial dragons wearing hoods in front of them. Looking at the celestial dragons in front of him, Smith twisted his lips. "What else can you say about not breathing the same air as us?" "I bother, why is it so noisy in front?" St. Charles sat on the back of a slave and shook his head with dissatisfaction. Hearing celestial dragons speak, several people immediately shut up. At the same time, Jennifer's eyes revealed vigilance and she glared at Smith. Smith also thought that his voice was too loud and attracted other people's attention, so he quickly made a gesture of shutting up. Gesture. The man in black next to him immediately bowed and said, "Lord Charles Saint, there is a little situation ahead, but it is not serious. Please feel free to participate in the sacrifice." His voice was full of respect and flattery. He knew that he had to satisfy Charles Saint, otherwise he might face severe punishment. The three Smiths heard the celestial dragons talking. After knowing that they had not been discovered, they looked at each other and then breathed a sigh of relief. When the man in the suit saw that the celestial dragons were not angry, he immediately stood up and led the way, because they did not know the specific situation. But the instructions given to them by their superiors were to continue the celestial dragon's sacrificial ceremony. "Isn't it here yet?" Charles Saint said impatiently, his voice full of arrogance, and his eyes shining with greed and desire. "Come on, sir, just turn a corner ahead." The man in black immediately replied respectfully, his voice full of respect. "I have it for you, kid." Smith, who was not far behind, said softly while looking at the white tiger in the front. The voice was full of admiration. "I didn't expect that this boy Bai Hu would actually find the real place." "I actually found it." Jennifer whispered to the side, her voice full of excitement. She couldn't suppress her joy at the thought of finding the treasure of celestial dragons soon. After following the celestial dragons and turning a corner, sure enough, what came into view was a huge golden door. The handles of the door were all inlaid with red gems. The man in black stepped forward, took out a huge golden key from his arms, inserted it into the keyhole, and twisted it slightly. The door was slowly opened, and the celestial dragons walked in proudly. The guards were guarding the door. They followed the wall and moved in through the golden door little by little. Fortunately, they were not discovered by the guards. Chapter 155. Stealing the Treasure House of Celestial Dragons. Wow! After Jennifer was slightly surprised, she covered her mouth to avoid being discovered by the people at the door. The reason is that after they entered it, the sight unfolding in front of them was enough to make them stunned. All kinds of sparkling gold and silver jewelry complement each other in front of your eyes. Colorful gems bloom like gorgeous flowers. Gold and jewelry are piled up like hills. There are even various kinds of swords stuck on some hills. The swords are inlaid with colorful gems. Smith looked at the golden sea in front of him, knowing that it was obviously not appropriate for them to continue to follow celestial dragons in the style of wallpaper. So he quietly walked up to Jennifer and White Tiger, turned them into two huge golden statues, and then turned into a golden statue himself. The three golden statues slowly followed the celestial dragons in front. In the sea of gold, the three golden statues are not eye-catching. In this way, several people followed the celestial dragons for almost 200 meters. What they saw along the way was gold everywhere, and several people were a little numb. Even the tens of thousands of murlocs in the white tiger's body. Their eyes, they all seemed to have become symbols of money. They began to be completely immersed in this ocean of money and somewhat lost themselves. They wanted to put away the gold immediately and looked up at the celestial dragons not far ahead. They had to hold back, now was not the time. Although several people could no longer bear it, they knew that at this critical moment, calmness and caution were the most important. Finally, they came to the front, which was a lifting platform with several small boxes placed on it. Judging from the size of these small boxes, what should be inside them was their target, devil fruit. Pick up these boxes and follow me. Charles Saint stretched out his radish thick fingers, clicked on a few boxes, and said to the guard next to him, "Yes, Lord Celestial Dragons." Several guards nearby immediately bowed forward and were about to pick up the boxes containing devil fruit. "No, they are going to take out the devil fruit," Smith warned Jennifer and Baihu in a low voice. Seeing the actions of the guards in front of them, the expressions of the three of them became serious. They didn't want to do anything, but if devil fruit was taken away, their goal would be meaningless. So after they looked at each other, determination flashed in their eyes. At this critical moment, they could not let them go out from here. Who made them want to take away the devil fruit? It looks like. The three of them looked at each other and made an instant decision. White Tiger quietly came up behind this group of people, and when they were defenseless, White Tiger took the lead in transforming from the golden statue back to its original form, and instantly launched a ruthless killing spree. He waved his huge claws, intersecting left and right, extremely fast, and before the person in front of him could react, he heard a dull sound. The men in suits who went to get the devil fruit in front of them were instantly cut into pieces by a terrifying force. Their flesh and blood flew everywhere, and their broken bodies were scattered all over the ground. His movements were quick and decisive, without any hesitation, and his eyes were full of murderous intent. He knew that he must deal with all these guards as soon as possible to avoid them being discovered. Jennifer returned to her human form and quickly came to a guard. Holding a dagger, she quietly came to the celestial dragons and looked at the man in a suit on the left. While covering his mouth, she stabbed his throat to prevent him from making a sound. The man in the suit could only utter a vague, before dying, and then collapsed to the ground. Jennifer's movements were very quickly, without any hesitation, and his eyes were full of murderous intent. Instead, Smith made some mistakes. When he was dealing with the celestial dragons, he accidentally made the celestial dragons scream and shout. However, Smith did not appear panicked and quickly smashed celestial dragon's head with his fist, rendering him unable to make a sound again. The group of people in front of them had all fallen to the ground, and the air was filled with the smell of blood. But this scream must have attracted the attention of the guard outside the door. Bai Hu quickly ran to the door on cat steps. When he saw two guards approaching, he reached out and broke the necks of the two guards, then dragged the bodies in and slowly closed the golden door. Next, it's our performance time. Jennifer's voice was full of joy. They took the lead in using the picture scroll and hid the 6 devil fruits in front of them inside the picture scroll. These devil fruits were also the main targets of their operation, and the safety of the devil fruits must be ensured. After all, the devil fruit that can be collected by celestial dragons is not an ordinary devil fruit. At the same time, they kept taking out picture scrolls and covering them on large and small gold mountains. These gold mountains were their secondary goals. Although they were not as precious as these top-notch devil fruits, they were still a huge amount of wealth. After Bai Hu closed the door, he also ran back here. The next moment, the fishman in his body kept jumping out of the window opened by his body. These fishmen are also the key to the operation. After all, if there are only 3 of them, they really can't move this large amount of gold away in a short time. The Murlocs had just passed through the window in the white tiger's body when they saw the gold outside. They were already shocked, so they moved very quickly. The various golds that they started to collect as soon as they came down began to pile up inside the castle. Everyone knows that they must transport the gold back to the castle as soon as possible. Every second they stay here, the danger will increase. Follow me. Smith led a small team of fishmen and carefully monitored the outside environment at the door of the giant golden door to prevent emergencies and allow them to evacuate in time. The speed of the tens of thousands of fishmen was still very fast. In just 10 minutes, all the gold and jewelry were collected, and then a few people walked towards the golden door. At this moment, Jennifer suddenly said something. This is the palace of the celestial dragons, so there should be more than just this treasure house. The two stopped, and just as they were about to reach for the golden door, they turned their heads to look at Jennifer. One man and one tiger nodded slowly. That's right, this shouldn't be the only treasure of the celestial dragons. They quietly slipped through the crack in the door. As for the bodies inside, they had used special potions to cover up the smell to prevent others from noticing the strong smell of blood. After coming out, I started to search the surroundings with this golden treasure house as the center, trying to avoid the guards while looking for buildings similar to this golden giant door. They quickly discovered 2 other treasure houses, which also contained a large amount of gold. After confirming that there were only these 2 treasure houses, they entered one of them first. But this time there was no one inside. They got in through the crack in the door and collected all the gold and various items inside. Chapter 156. Meeting the Kurozumi brothers and sisters. At the same time, just when they found the second treasure house, the Kurozumi brother and sister had also sneaked behind the Valley of Gods. The two walked out of a palace. Kurozumi Higurashi transformed into a celestial dragons, followed by Kurozumi Semimaru. The two of them were very purposeful. Because they had been here before, they knew the layout of the place very well, which also gave them great convenience. In that palace just now, they eliminated a celestial dragons and obtained the key to one of the treasure houses from him. They took the lead in arriving at the first treasure house, and no one stopped them along the way. Instead, they all saluted them. This is it. Kurozumi Higurashi's voice was full of anticipation. His eyes fixed on the golden door in front of him. This huge door looks very dazzling, with exquisite patterns carved on it. The handles are 2 huge red gems. Yes, this is it. Kurozumi Mitomaru looked at the golden door in front of him greedily. Their eyes sparkled with the desire for treasure. They even planned to enter the Valley of the Gods and steal the top devil fruit. The layout was no longer a year or 2. If rocks hadn't attacked the Valley of the Gods, they might not have been able to enter here in their lifetime. The treasure house that the two came to was the 3rd treasure house, and it was the only treasure house that they remembered at that time. Under the expectant eyes of Kurozumi Higurashi, Kurozumi Mitomaru took out the key in his arms. The key was only as big as a palm. It was made entirely of pure gold with some complex patterns carved on it. He inserted the key into the keyhole of the giant door and gently turning, and with a rattling sound, the giant door was slowly opened. He. The giant door slowly opened, and the two laughed gloomily when they saw the dazzling golden light inside the giant door. They know that the treasures here are now up to them to choose from. Then Kurozumi Higurashi walked in immediately. She couldn't wait. Kurozumi Mitimaru looked around carefully at the door and found that no one was passing by. He quickly entered the treasure house and closed the door from the inside. They also knew that they had to hurry up and take the treasure away, otherwise the delay would be too long. Once discovered, they would not be able to get out of here based on their strength. Just 5 minutes after the two of them entered, Jennifer and Smith White Tiger had also arrived in front of the third treasure house. They looked around and found that there were no guards, so they transformed into a thin piece of paper and slipped in through the crack in the door. Isn't that right? As soon as Bai Hu came in, he smelled the scent of strangers in the air, and immediately stretched out his hand to stop the two of them. What's wrong, White Tiger? Smith quickly stopped and hid aside to look at White Tiger. Bai Hu sniffed his nose gently. There are two strange smells in the air, but they feel very familiar, just in these few minutes. Did people from other forces come in? Smith touched his chin, thought for a moment, and said to the two of them, "No matter what group of people are leaving, let's go and take a look first. If we can't do anything, we'll retreat." They have already captured 2 treasure houses, and there are 7 or 8 devil fruits alone, so if the last treasure house is impossible, they must first ensure their own safety. If they die here, they won't be able to take the things they got here out with them, so it's best to be cautious. Let's go. To be cautious, Smith turned the two of them into golden statues and slowly walked towards the center. As soon as I walked not far from the center stage, I heard a voice coming from the front. "Is this devil fruit? Eh ha ha ha." Kurozumi Higurashi let out a harsh laugh. "That's it, the zone phantom beast species. Yamata no Orochi form. Hurry up and put away the other devil fruits and get out quickly. You can't take too long." Kurozumi Higurashi grabbed the devil fruit and stuffed it into his arms. Kurozumi Semimaru also quickly started to put several other boxes into his pockets. "How's it going? Can't you make it?" Bai Hu looked a little anxious as he watched the devil fruit in front of him being taken away by 2 people. "We have to discuss it carefully and we must separate the 2 of them." The 3 of them naturally recognized the 2 brothers and sisters above as the Kurozumi brothers and sisters. Kurozumi Higurashi was better to say, mainly Kurozumi Semimaru. His devil fruit ability is a barrier fruit, which can form an indestructible barrier. The 3 of them are really unable to break through this turtle shell, and time is tight, but they can't just watch the 2 of them take away the devil fruit. Smith rolled his eyes and said to Bai Hu, "White Tiger, I leave it to you." If there was anyone among the 3 people present who could quietly approach Kurozumi Mitomaru and control the murderous intention in his heart, then it was Hakutora. As a member of the Tiger clan, the White Tiger is naturally at the top of the food chain. It can be said to be at the ancestor level in terms of hiding its aura. It would be perfect for White Tiger to deal with Kurozumi Mitomaru. Bai Hu nodded slightly and said nothing, but his golden statue began to slowly approach the left passage leading to the high platform. This was also the route Kurozumi Mitomaru took to go out after turning around. As for Kurozumi Higurashi, it is left to Smith and Jennifer to solve the problem. Tap tap tap. The 2 Kurozumi brothers quickly put away the devil fruit and strode towards the door. But just a dozen steps down the platform, Kurozumi Mitomaru suddenly felt the sense of crisis and ultimate. "Be careful." Just after he shouted with a look of horror, Jennifer and Smith took the lead in attacking Kurozumi Higurashi. He immediately raised his special hand gesture, forming a transparent wall in front of Kurozumi Higurashi. Boom! The transparent wall did withstand the punches and kicks of Jennifer and Smith. But the next second, blood overflowed from the corner of Kurozumi Mitomaru's mouth. He slowly lowered his head and looked at the huge tiger claws coming out of his chest, then raised his head and slowly looked back. It turns out that several people were afraid that Kurozumi Mitomaru would directly cover the 2 of them with a semicircular barrier, leaving them helpless. Therefore, they attacked Kurozumi Higurashi first to expose Kurozumi Semimaru's flaws, and then White Tiger completed the final finishing blow. Kurozumi Mitomaru slowly fell to the ground, as if time was stretched out, and his weak body gradually lost its support. After Kurozumi Higurashi saw Kurozumi Mitomaru's appearance, Her eyes widened in shock. The fallen figure of Mitomaru was reflected in her pupils, and she couldn't help but exclaim, "Mitomaru!" The voice was heartbreaking, as if it was going to penetrate the endless night sky. There are only a few members of the Kurozumi family now. Every time a person is lost, the bloodline of the Kurozumi family is weakened. At this moment, Higarashi's heart felt like a knife, and she felt as if she was losing her support, like a candle that was about to go out, unable to light up the night again. At the moment when she was stunned, Smith took the lead in launching an attack. His movements were as fast as the wind. He lowered his head and picked up the sword stuck at his feet. The blade flashed with sharp light in the air. He swung his sword and stabbed Kurozumi. Poof! The sword blade passed through Kurozumi Higarashi's heart, and he only had time to say 3 words. Did not expect. Her voice was full of pain and shock, but her eyes were full of unwillingness. She looked at Smith in front of her fiercely, as if to remember him firmly. Her eyes were full of anger and hatred, knowing that the end was coming, but she didn't want to die like this. Maybe she didn't expect that there would be another group of people coming here. Although her eyes were full of unwillingness, she could only fall to the ground helplessly. In the last few seconds before his death, he must have been thinking about the Kurozumi family. Chapter 157. Newgate's blood, it is finally over. After Jennifer, Smith, and Bai-Hu looked at each other, their eyes showed a sense of relief. They didn't expect to meet the Kurozumi brothers and sisters here. But fortunately, it has been resolved, and the brother and sister have fallen at their feet. Just after the Kurozumi sisters died, there were 2 ordinary fruits in the central square of the Valley of Gods festival, which quietly changed their original appearance. Jennifer breathed a sigh of relief, then stepped forward and opened their clothes. Sure enough, there were 3 devil fruits hidden inside. She waved the scroll and stored the 3 devil fruits in the scroll. Then he turned and nodded to Smith and Bai-Hu. The next moment, a large number of fishmen jumped out of the white tiger's body. What followed was a feast for them. They rushed to various locations in the treasure house crazily. They wanted to carry away this batch of gold as quickly as possible. This was also the last one, treasure house. After finishing the last treasure trove, it was time for them to leave. His eyes turned to a corner of the battlefield. Gu la la la. Newgate stood opposite Sengoku and let out a bold smile. He waved the bushunkuri and ran towards Sengoku, slashing at Sengoku head-on with the sharp blade. Ba-tang! The roar echoed in the corners of the battlefield, and the blade was wrapped with a red and black aura. Big Buddha shockwave. Sengoku's resolute face remained silent as he transformed into the form of a big Buddha and slowly pushed out his golden palm. A strong energy wave burst out from the palm of his hand, and the fluctuations of the shock wave were even visible to the naked eye. Newgate watched as it rushed toward him with an all-destroying impact, without even flinching. Kong Gen. He laughed and waved his left fist. White light waves responded on his left fist, forming a dazzling light. The air around him seemed to be twisted by this force, forming circles of ripples. The moment the 2 people's attacks touched, the space in front of them exploded like fragments. Around them, the waves rolled, setting off huge waves tens of meters high and spreading to the surroundings. Violent energy waves swept everything around. At this time, the weak people near the corner of the battlefield were all knocked away by this energy wave. The remaining people were shocked by this powerful force and turned to look at Newgate and Sengoku. Captain Newgate, mighty. He is indeed our Captain Newgate. Newgate's team members shouted at Newgate from the other side of the battlefield. Pirates, don't be too arrogant. Please don't be distracted by fighting with me. Marine Vice Admiral Nick, seeing how disrespectful the pirate in front of him was, couldn't help himself and slashed past with his sword energy. After the shock wave passed, the 2 stood on both sides of the ruins and their battle continued. Sengoku, look away, your good friend Garp. He should be facing an angry Carl now. Newgate saw Sengoku's eyes turn to the left and back, and knew that he was watching Garp. On the other side, 1 black and 1 gold kept colliding in the air. Spit! Sengoku spat out a mouthful of blood and wiped the corners of his mouth. He is not worried about Garp now. He is the person who knows Garp best. Garp has trained himself crazily in the past few years, even smashing hundreds of thousands of meters high mountains, just to fight Carl today. He didn't watch. Have you had any back and forth fights with Carl so far? Newgate, don't talk nonsense. Sengoku ran towards Newgate with heavy steps, and at the same time stretched out his right hand wrapped around Conqueror's haki, and blasted towards Newgate. Not to be outdone, Newgate stood calm Yunki on the ground, his legs slightly bent, his energy drained from his dantian, and he suddenly punched out. Big shock. Bang! Their fists collided in the blink of an eye, and the ground beneath their feet could not withstand the violent attack and began to crack. Sengoku and Newgate both fell backwards after a brief moment of contact. The surrounding space is obscured by dust. Ahem. Newgate spat out a mouthful of blood, and then continued towards Sengoku. Ba Jin, who was hiding on the side of the battlefield, saw this and quietly came to the place where Newgate vomited blood just now. Miss Ba Jin actually had contact with members of the MADS organization a long time ago. After coming into contact with Vinsmoke, I understood some of the genetic issues. So before, she wanted to use blood to create replicas of the top powerhouses, but she has not been able to collect the blood of these top powerhouses over the years, because the battles that can cause these top powerhouses to suffer serious scars in New World is so rare, almost non-existent. And she doesn't like some strong people because of Devil Fruit's blessing. The reason why she met Vinsmoke was because she planned to collect Whitebeard's blood and create a Whitebeard clone. But now there is a better candidate, that is Carl, but the battle on Carl's side is too dangerous, so collect Newgate's blood first. Of course, if you can collect the blood of Carl or Lord Rox, that would be great too. But that's all. On the fierce battlefield, walking through the crowd, his heart beat like his ribs, and every step was filled with tension and fear. Finally, she came to the place where Newgate had vomited blood. She first observed the surroundings vigilantly. After finding that no one noticed him, she quickly took out a vial from her arms, collected the blood on the ground, and then twisted it again. He turned around and looked around, and after realizing that no one had noticed, he quickly found a place to hide. Ba Jin's strength is not as high as expected. On this battlefield, her strength can only barely protect herself. She would not foolishly participate in a frontal battlefield. If something went wrong and she died here, it would be too much of a loss. When Huohuahua saw this scene, she felt a little curious, and she muttered to herself in confusion, "This is." However, before she could think about it, Marine's attack came in front of her, and her attention was immediately drawn back. As she watched, two Marines, one in front and one behind, were attacking her. Huohuahua reacted quickly. First, he punched the Marine soldier in front of him away. Then he retreated and spun in midair, resisting a sneak attack from a Marine soldier. After knocking down the two Marine soldiers 3 times, 5 times and 2 times, he finally regained his composure and looked at the direction where Ba Jin was just now. But she was no longer there. She quickly thought carefully about what happened there just now. Newgate and Sengoku. But in the blink of an eye, she continued to join the battle, and this matter was quickly forgotten. No one would have imagined how bizarre the so-called Whitebeard II's origin would be. Speaking of this, I have to talk about the genetic black technology from the pirate world. It can completely imitate a person's physical fitness just through blood. It can be said to be a well-deserved black technology. I'm afraid even Vinsmoke has never thought of doing this. He only used genetic technology for cloning, and did not expect that people with corresponding physiques could be cloned through the blood of strong men. This may be the limitation of characters in the pirate world. I remember the new Shichibukai in the original work. It seems that Vegapunk implanted the genetic samples of the Lunaria tribe through genetic technology, thus creating the so-called new Shichibukai. Chapter 158. The scale of CP0 death in battle begins to tip. Moreover, the strength of the new Shichibukai in the original work seems to be much stronger than those of the same level. This shows how strong the bloodline of the Lunaria clan is. No wonder it is the bloodline of the legendary god, as Oda said. And if I am correct, the first people to live on Marijoy should be the Lunaria tribe. Because the first Marijoy did not ascend the pontoon, and the Lunaria tribe was born with wings, and the news from Oda came out that the Lunaria tribe was also called the Clan of Gods, so it can be concluded from this that the Lunaria tribe was born with wings. Marijoy at the beginning should be where the Lunaria tribe lives, and they are truly worthy of being called a tribe of gods. No wonder Ba Jin fell in love with the blood of super powerful people like Newgate and Carl. We got it. This time we have Newgate's blood. At least we can clone a strong man lower than Newgate's level. After Ba Jin collected the blood, he quietly ran to the other side of the battlefield. The first thing that comes into view is Rox. Hearing her tone, it seems that Ba Jin has not been idle in the past 3 years. He should have established a deep connection with Vinsmoke, because Mads has been forced to disband under the influence of Carl. So now the only one who can clone a human body through blood should be only Vinsmoke left. She must have seen that most of Newgate and Carl's strength was due to their blood relationship, and that's why she came up with this idea. And this battle was the time when her idea could be realized. Only in this battle will Rox, Carl, Newgate and others leave enough blood that she and he can collect unscrupulously without arousing suspicion. Ha ha ha. Rox moved in the wind, and his clothes danced. First, he swung a slash to the right, and a 100-meter-long sword energy slashed towards CP0 on the right, enveloping Conqueror's Haki. Kamui. Seeing this, Hill and Kong quickly supported the man. The 4 of them finally managed to achieve a balance. If one of them quits, the balance will be broken instantly. Just as Hill and Kong ran to the right, a hint of cunning appeared on the corner of Rox's mouth. He raised the black dragon and rushed towards a CP0 on the left like lightning. When he was fighting Hill, Kong and the 2 CP0 admirals, he had been staring at the 2 weaker CP0s. Haki had been releasing his observation Haki during the battle, trying to catch the 2 of them, and finally he did. When CP0 on the left saw Rox rushing towards him, his face instantly turned pale. After a short battle, he already knew that Rox would not be his opponent in a head-on confrontation. If it weren't for the help of the other 3 people, he might not be able to hold on for dozens of rounds. No, the target turned out to be that person. Rox, don't underestimate people. Marshall Hill rushed to the rescue, trying to attract Rox's attention by shouting, while waving his fist wrapped around Conqueror's. Not to be outdone, Kong launched an attack on Rox from the other side. However, the 2 men still hesitated a little. The black dragon's blade instantly cut through the CP0 on the left. The next moment, the CP0's head was separated, and blood filled the sky. Ha ha ha. Rox stood in midair and laughed wildly. Watching the CP0 slowly hit the ground, he turned to look at Marshall Hill, Kong and others, and said with a mocking look on his face, "It's not enough for the 4 of you to join forces. Rox, don't be too arrogant." After Kong stared at Rox, he immediately rushed forward. Kong punched out with a white wave of air on his fist. This punch directly compressed the air in front of him, and a wave of air visible to the naked eye rushed towards Rox. At the same time, Marshall Hill and the other CP0 were not to be outdone. They stepped forward to fight Rox with their fists and swords. Rox first dodged Kong's attack in the air, and then used the black dragon's blade to collide with Marshall Hill's long sword. At this moment, Kong rushed up and suddenly hit Rox on the right side of his face. Another CP0 wanted to sneak attack Rox from the left, and kicked Rox's waist with a whip kick, but Rox turned around to block it. "I caught you." Rox didn't expect that the CP0 in front of him would actually bring the flaw to him. Looking at the sad face of CP0 in front of him, his eyes turned to the corpse of the other CP0 on the ground, and he wiped the corners of his mouth. There was an inexplicable smell. Could it be that the 2 of them could still be good friends? In fact, his guess was correct. These 2 people joined the CP0 organization in the same batch, and their relationship was quite deep. After seeing his companion die, his grief and anger surged into his heart. Only then did a big flaw appear. But Rox was waiting for them to reveal their flaws. He stretched out his left hand and grabbed the left leg of the CP0 in front of him, and waved his long sword with his right hand to resist Marshall Hill. But Marshall Hill only persisted for a moment before he was chopped off by Rox. Rox waved his sword with a smug smile on his face. Then Rox's eyes were sharp. He locked the CP0 in front of him, and softly uttered 2 words, "Kamui." His right hand suddenly slid upward, and the black dragon's sharp blade, with the power of Conqueror's Haki, swiped directly from his waist. The whole person was divided into 2 parts, half of which slowly fell to the ground. Rox let go of the body half in his left hand, gently wiped the blood on his face, and said arrogantly with an arrogant smile on his face, "I hope you two won't be as strong as them." "Damn it!" Marshall Hill cursed through gritted teeth, looking at Rox with an angry expression. He didn't expect the CP0 in front of him to be so restless and so overwhelmed by anger. Now that it's fine, with just the two of them, wouldn't the chance of winning against Rox be reduced by 1 point? This is going to be difficult. Kong frowned and looked at the two CP0s who died tragically on the ground with a solemn expression. Marshall Hill and Kong looked at each other and looked up at Rox in front of them. They knew that from this moment on, the balance was interrupted. But they had no reason to back down now, and the two men's expressions froze and they rushed towards Rox again. Although Rox is strong, he is not without any scars. There is also a lot of Rox blood left on the battlefield. What Ba Jin was worried about was that she had no chance to rush to the battlefield. The battlefield where Rox, Marshall Hill and others were was too big, and they would be affected if they were not careful, so she just remembered the place where Rox's blood was, and her whole body was always waiting for the opportunity. Rox swung the black dragon directly towards Marshall Hill. The only two people left in front of him were not worth mentioning in his eyes. After a while, he would be able to walk into the Valley of Gods openly. "Don't be too arrogant, Rox." Kong, waving the fist wrapped around Conqueror's haki, hit him. "Be careful." Xie Yuanzai was thinking just now that he was the strongest at the scene, so why Rox came straight to him. When he found Kong rushing towards him from the side, Rox's mouth twisted. He knew something was wrong and Kong might have been fooled. He quickly rushed towards Rox brandishing his sword. Chapter 159. Hill is seriously injured. Kamui. Neither of them expected that Rox would pull the same trick again. First, he struck Kamui, slashing out a sword energy hundreds of meters high, piercing the sky, rushing towards Kong and interrupting his attack from the side. Clang. Is it so easy to be fooled? Rox's left hand was covered with thick armor, and haki firmly grasped Marshall Hill's sword. Hill didn't expect that Rox would trade injuries for injuries in order to defeat them. He waved the black dragon in his hand and stabbed Marshall Hill directly. Marshall Hill's expression changed drastically and he immediately covered armament haki on his chest. But how could the sword wrapped around Conqueror's haki be blocked so easily? The next second the sword passed directly through his chest. Marshall, after Kong was repelled, he roared instantly when he saw the scene in midair. "That's the Marshal. No, go and support the Marshal." This roar attracted the attention of everyone present. When Garp heard the sound, he immediately waved his iron fist and knocked Carl back. "What, are you going to run away from the battlefield?" To be honest, Carl didn't expect that Garp's strength had improved so quickly in the past 3 years, and that he wouldn't be able to defeat him in a short period of time. No wonder the Roger Pirates, who can be played by one person in the later period, are running around everywhere. It seems that Garp's strength has reached the semi-overlord level. At this level, it may be easier to defeat each other, but it is not that difficult to kill each other. It requires at least 2 to 3 opponents of the same level. Complete this difficult task. Spit. Garp spat and wiped his mouth. "Carl, let's continue fighting and come back next time." After Garp finished speaking, he didn't look at Carl, but stepped on the moonwalk and flew directly towards the rocks in the sky. Carl didn't stop him. To be honest, Garp's strength really prevented Carl from paying attention to other people. He didn't even know what happened to Jennifer's plan. What happened to Borsellino and others present. So he was relieved to see Garp leave alone. What I didn't expect was that Garp would be so strong. It seems that it was true that Garp and Roger beat Rox to death on the Valley of the Gods. "Rox!" Garp roared angrily, swinging his iron fist and hitting Rox directly. Rox swung the blade and threw Marshall Hill to the ground, turning to resist Garp's iron fist. Clang! Rox looked at Garp with an inexplicable expression on his face. "Garp, we are all members of the D family, why do you want to stop me?" Rox felt that Garp had power that was not inferior to him, and roared angrily. His voice was full of unwillingness. He couldn't understand why someone from the D family would be willing to be a lackey for the celestial dragons. There's nothing more to say now. Rox, the sea must not be chaotic now. Garp's face was firm. Now the rampaging Rox pirate must be stopped. Ha ha ha, I know that as a member of the D family, How can I not know anything about it? But we chose different paths. So, if you want to stop me, then come on. Rox felt relieved knowing that Garp was not willing to be a lackey for celestial dragons. But now he would never stop his movements. He stretched out his left hand to signal Garp. Bone Fist Meteor Star. Garp swung his fist wrapped around armament Haki, swung towards Rox, and at the same time released Observation Haki, firmly locking Rox's position. Rox didn't back down at all. With a bang, the black dragon directly collided with Garp's iron fist. Garp's armament Haki blocked Rox's attack. He was not directly cut away by Rox like Marshall Hill, but stood there and fought with Rox for strength. Garp's black left fist immediately struck the blade, knocking it away. Rox didn't hold back either. The toes of his right foot were covered with thick armament Haki and he kicked towards Garp's chest. Although you didn't really work as a lackey for the Celestial Dragons, you still betrayed the D clan and actually joined the Marines. I can't keep you today. Rox's words seemed gloomy, and his expression began to turn ferocious. Today he was going to kill Garp here and clean up the door for the D clan with his own hands. Rox, do you think I'm afraid of you? Terrorists like you shouldn't live in this world. He did not answer Rox's words directly. Facing Rox's attack, he immediately retracted his left hand and slashed downwards. He quickly approached with punches and kicks, and the air in the middle seemed to be compressed by terrifying force. Bang! The powerful fight caused Garp's body to fly hundreds of meters upside down. It's not that strong. After Garp stabilized his body, he looked deeply at Rox on the opposite side. Although he knew that Rox was very strong, he didn't expect that he could be so strong. After 3 years of self-training, he had developed his physical fitness to the ultimate level. Even Carl felt that he was evenly matched. Unexpectedly, the Rox in front of him was even better than him. He shook his trembling left hand, and severe pain came from his left hand, causing him to twitch his face. Clang, clang, clang. Calm put the seriously injured Marshall Hill behind him. After seeing Garp being knocked away, he stood up and faced Rox. The two men began to fight fiercely. Garp stood there and shook his neck, then jumped up to join the siege. Hello everyone, it's me again, Morris, bringing you live reports. Now the Rox pirate is attacking the Celestial Dragon's sacrificial place, the Valley of the Gods. Morris stood in front of the video phone bug and introduced the Valley of the Gods. Everything in the valley is captured, and the scene of this passionate battle is transmitted to the entire sea. At the same time, most residents in the world and Grand Line saw this scene that shocked them through the video phone bug. Wow, is this the palace of the Celestial Dragons? A civilian exclaimed, looking at the glittering palace behind the battlefield. They had never imagined what the palace of the Celestial Dragons would look like. Celestial Dragons brings them only oppression. The people of most of the franchised countries are under strong oppression. There is no spiritual culture here, and only through hard work every day can they get meager profits. Someone actually challenged the Celestial Dragons. Another civilian said excitedly when he saw the Rox pirate fighting against the Marine Admiral. After several years of secret propaganda, most people have long distrusted Marine, which has also caused Marines' recruitment numbers to decrease each time. We are running out of people to recruit. Looking at the situation on the battlefield, someone immediately said in admiration, the people at Rox Pirate are really heroes. This sentence expresses what many people are thinking. Throughout the entire sea, people were clapping and cheering, yeah. The Celestial Dragons deserve to die. Some people who were oppressed by the Celestial Dragons and the escaped slaves shouted emotionally when they saw this scene. This scene before my eyes. It caused a sensation among countless people in the sea. Many people had accumulated disgust and anger towards the Celestial Dragons. They longed to usher in true freedom and get rid of the oppression of the Celestial Dragons. The Rox pirate approach undoubtedly accelerated their courage to vent. Chapter 160. Their respective battles. The videophone bug kept changing positions in the land of the Valley of the Gods. First, Kong was seen waving his fists and engaging in a fierce battle with Rox. Although only he and Garp are besieging Rox now, it's because Garp is strong enough. Therefore, the balance could still be barely maintained. The fighting between several people was fierce, and the sky began to become dense with dark clouds. When the camera turned, we saw Newgate, Ochaku, John, Golden Lion, Charlotte Linlin, Kaido, Carl and others, each of them using their own fighting and skills to fight to the death with Marine Vice Admiral and Admiral. Newgate was fighting fiercely with Sengoku with his shock fruit. Every attack seemed to shatter the space. This also caused some people who had never seen Newgate's devil fruit ability to exclaim, "What devil fruit is this?" It is really that every time Newgate strikes, his right hand is filled with white light. Every time he punches out, the space in front of him will be smashed like glass. The energy caused by it makes Sengoku a little nervous, can't stand it. I know, it's shock fruit." An excited civilian stood up immediately. He had been lucky enough to see Newgate use this ability before. "I heard that the shock fruit can not only shatter space, but can also trigger tsunamis and cause major earthquakes. It is a top-notch devil fruit." After hearing the explanation, everyone present nodded thoughtfully. Silver Axe wielded his giant axe to seal the defenses around him. He was fighting against Air Force Admiral Casa, and the two were evenly matched. The main reason is that the strength of the Air Force and Army is naturally lower than that of the Marine. Therefore, the strength of the Air Force Admiral is barely considered a pseudo-admiral level, which is just right on par with the Silver Axe. The next moment the camera turned to Ochaku. Ochaku was holding a big sword and quickly shuttled across the battlefield with his agility and precise sword skills. His opponent was Air Force Admiral Udir. To say that one of the most intense scenes on the battlefield right now must include Golden Lion. The Golden Lion wields his double swords and uses the ability of the Lion Fruit at the same time to continuously attack Air Marshal Sko. The lion made of mud even blocked the sunlight in an area, waving sword auras. The dense attack gave Sko no time to stop. Charlotte Linlin kept wielding the Emperor's blade, clashing with Zephyr. Every time the two of them fight, a clanging sound can be heard. Well, I hate fighting with you," Charlotte Linlin said with a look of displeasure. Zephyr really used his physical skills to the ultimate level, and Zhou Shen had almost no flaws. It's like an airtight turtle shell with no weak points at all. Kaido, Borsellino and others fought against most of the vice admirals on the field. Although the intensity was not as intense as the battlefields mentioned above, they were important factors in changing the direction of the battlefield. There are 200,000 Marines and close to 100,000 pirates. Their numbers have been drastically reduced. The entire battlefield was dyed red, and blood became the theme on this battlefield. Some Marine soldiers were horrified to find that their comrades kept falling to the ground, and the pirates in front of them were like endless waves, rushing towards them one after another. "Don't panic." Nick stood up. He knew that the Marine in front of him was a little distracted. It was the first time for many people to participate in a battle of this scale, so he didn't blame him. He turned to look at Kong and others who were still fighting on the battlefield. The admirals are still fighting fiercely. How can they be the first to show cowardice? Rush! Nick yelled, then rushed towards the pirate in front of him. The surrounding Marine soldiers also looked at the three admirals Kong, Sengoku, Zephyr who were fighting, nodded solemnly, strengthened their inner beliefs, gritted their teeth, and rushed towards the pirates with weapons in hand. As for the battle at the bottom, it has now completely turned into a physical collision. The longer the battle lasts, the greater the physical exhaustion of the soldiers at the bottom of both sides will be, but it is undeniable that there are still many monsters among pirates. Thunder 8 trigrams. Kaido waved his mace, knocking away countless Marines in front of him one after another, and slowly moved towards the center of the battlefield. And everyone headed by Borsellino faced the first problem. 8-foot Magatama. Borsellino stood in midair, with a dazzling light shining behind him, and one dazzling light bullet after another hit Marine. Damn pirates! Julian Vice Admiral punched out, slamming Borsellino in the air to the ground. Borsellino stood up from where he was, wiped the bloodline from his mouth, and said with a smile, "Within the mouth." Lightsaber. He clasped his hands together and pulled them apart suddenly, and a golden sword appeared in his hand. He turned to look at Sakazuki and others and signaled, then rushed forward first and started a fierce confrontation with Julian. And Sakazuki and others did not look relaxed at all, because dozens of people with different auras ran in front of them. It was the Marine Vice Admiral stationed here. I hope everyone won't die." After Sakazuki finished speaking, he rushed towards the vice admiral in front of him. With a smile, Perispero, Daifuku, Ryuji and others looked at each other and followed Sakazuki's pace without hesitation. "I've shown you the general battlefield. Let's see if you can see what the Celestial Dragon's palace looks like." At this time, a big face of Mormoris appeared in front of the screen, and then he seemed to be sitting on a flying things. The whole person's sight began to drift towards the island in the air. Looking at the splendid palaces in front of them, everyone on the sea exclaimed in amazement. "Marijoy, that's not good, Lord Five Elders. The World News Agency is broadcasting live again." The door to the Five Elders conference room was suddenly pushed open by someone outside, and a young man with blonde hair ran in. "Nani?" The bearded Five Elders immediately took the phone bug from his hand and put it on the table. The next moment they saw the whole process, especially when they saw Marshall Hill lying unconscious in the corner, Garp and Kong being continuously repelled in front of them, and a large number of Marine Vice Admiral being resisted. The look on their faces showed anger. "Damrock's pirate. It seems that this old bone is about to move." The tall and thin Five Elders stood up with sharp eyes. Middle Ages Five Elders agree. "Yes, if we don't go, if it gets worse and spreads to the ears of Lord I.M., the five of us will also be responsible for the failure of our work. Judging from the situation at the scene, if they don't go, Marine won't be able to survive for long. Let the Knights of God join the battle." The middle-aged Five Elders crossed their legs and clasped their hands together. Anyway, the original mission of the Knights of God was to clean up the battlefield. Now it seems that there is no difference between joining early or joining late. "I told you that you should have gone a long time ago. You have to wait." The bald Five Elders touched his bald head, stood up, and walked out of the room angrily. Several other people looked at each other and began to walk out. Chapter 161. Breaking through Marine's defense. Carl happened to have no opponent at this time, and when the Five Elders decided to go to the Valley of God's battlefield, he felt a sense of urgency. "It doesn't work like this, it's up to me." Carl transformed into his true form as a titan on the spot, stretched his right hand upwards, the sky began to become covered with dark clouds, and violent thunder slowly gathered. Garp, who was playing against rocks, caught Carl's movements in his peripheral vision and immediately exclaimed, "Not good." "What's going on?" Kong, who didn't know Carl's move yet, looked confused. People who have never actually fought against Carl will not understand the power of Carl's move. But all this happened in the blink of an eye, and there was no admiral-level strongman around Carl to stop him from taking action. Thundering, the sky seemed to begin to collapse, and a large amount of thunder turned into waterfalls and rushed towards Carl. Carl made a move with his right hand, and a frightening light of lightning burst out from his eyes. Veins popped out on his body, and he held one end of the thunder waterfall with his right hand, and with a sudden force, he shot toward the ground in front of him like a javelin. Crack! The violent thunder shattered the defense line that everyone in the Marine had worked hard to manage almost in an instant. Both the Marine and the pirates along the way were wiped out in this attack. A line of several hundred meters wide was the passage point straight into the Valley of Gods. This attack directly cleared 1/10 of the Marines present. Such a powerful attack stunned everyone present. The pirate was shocked by Carl's strength, while Marine was filled with grief and anger at the death of his comrades in battle. "Lord Carl is mighty. Lord Carl is the strongest." The pirates who were shocked by these scenes cheered towards Carl as soon as they woke up. This was also the first time they saw such an attack from Carl. But Marine is different. "Lucy, damn pirates." The remaining Marines quickly blocked the passage and gritted their teeth as they looked at the excited pirates in front of them. "The route to the island has been opened. If you want treasure, please follow me." Carl waved the Fangtian painted halberd and took the lead in running forward on this huge passage. "Pirate, you can't go anywhere." Vice Admiral Mori came to Carl first. Looking at the Vice Admiral blocking the road in front of him, Carl dismissed it. "It's better for you to save it." Carl turned Fang Tian's painted halberd in a circle on his right hand. Thunder half-moon slash. Wielding the Fang Tian painted halberd, he drew a gorgeous arc in the air and swept towards Mori's Vice Admiral. Mori didn't panic at all when he saw the attack coming. Iron body, while covering armament hockey in front of the chest. Whoosh! Karl's Fangtian painted halberd was wrapped with rich conqueror's haki and he ducked past. No, iron body, even the dog. Karl didn't even look back and continued running forward. Mori's eyes widened and he saw his lower body, still standing on the battlefield. In the videophone bug, the battle scenes shown became more and more intense, especially Karl's attack, which made everyone on the sea gradually lose their fear of celestial dragons. They had always thought that the celestial dragons were invincible, but they did not expect that they would appear to be insignificant in front of the Rock's pirate. Even this battle has become a cry for freedom and a challenge to the world government and the authority of the celestial dragons. Everything that happens on this battlefield has a profound impact on the people of the sea. This is a battle that changes the world and allows ordinary people to rise up against the celestial dragons. Follow Lord Karl and charge. As Karl opened a path, a large group of pirates followed and rushed towards the island crazily. Ha ha ha. It seems that your marine's deployment is not very good. Rox kept swinging his sword and slashing at Garp and Kong. Kong gasped. Pirates, don't be complacent. From the corner of his eye, he also saw Karl who was charging towards the island. But he was not worried at all because he knew that there were still Knights of God on the island who were not participating in the battle. He looked at the large number of dead and injured marine soldiers on the ground, and a trace of sadness flashed in his heart. If the Knights of God had joined the battle in advance, then the marine soldiers would have reduced a large number of casualties, right? Damn it, the world government doesn't treat Marine as a human being. Garp directly waved his iron fist and attacked Rox. Don't judge him for what he is, Rox. He didn't care if Karl rushed to the island, he just wanted to kill Rox, the culprit of the attack on the Valley of the Gods, with his fist. It seems that you are very confident. Although Rox was able to resist the two of them with ease, because of this, he did not have his hands free. Looking at the two people in front of them, they showed no concern at all as Karl rushed inward. He guessed that there should be admiral-level masters on the island who had not participated in the battle, and when he saw a sad expression on Kong's face, he must have been the one arranged by the world government. It seems like you're not doing well internally either, Rox laughed. At this time, the infighting between Marine and the world government is what he wants to see most. The lion cuts thousands of bones. While several people were talking, a roar came from the sky. It turned out that it was Golden Lion and Air Marshal Sko who decided the winner. When several people looked up, they found Sko's body falling from the sky. This is also the first true admiral-level strongman to die on the field. Sko's death will bring a painful blow to Marine. Jia ha ha ha. Kong, K, let me be your opponent. After the golden lion floated down from the sky, it immediately came to Kong's side. Clang, 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 soon the two began to fight fiercely. And at the edge of the battlefield, the phone bug in the arms of a mysterious man rang. Blue, blue. Hello? Okay, got it. After the mysterious man hung up the phone, he looked at the four people standing aside. 5 elders command, join the battlefield, yes. The leader is none other than Ochre, the captain of the Knights of God. He led 4 of his men directly toward the Rox. Rox is wielding the black dragon to resist Garp's attack. At this moment, he sensed a few unfamiliar auras in his sight, knocked the Garp in front of him away, and looked up. Oh, another guest is here. On the side of the Valley of the Gods, 5 men in golden armor appeared and rushed toward the Rox. Pirate Rox, if you surrender to the celestial dragons now, I will choose to spare your life. Okul crossed his arms and stood in midair looking at Rox below with an arrogant expression. The other 4 people had the same attitude, ha ha ha. You are the first person who dares to talk to me like this. After Rox finished laughing, his eyes began to turn gloomy and he felt insulted. He raised the black dragon in his hand, Kamui. A kilometer-long sword energy swept towards the 5 people. Stubborn. Hauken. One blade style, slash wave. Ochre was the first to swing in with his fists. Faced with this huge sword energy, several other people were not to be outdone and used their own attack methods. What? This is impossible. Okul's face changed immediately after his fist met this powerful sword energy. He didn't expect that Rock's strength was beyond his imagination. The next moment, the 5 people were directly knocked away by the sword energy. Iron Fist. Fall. Just when Rox was about to swing his second sword energy, Garp rushed forward and interrupted his attack. "You're really in the way, Garp." Chapter 162. Rushing into the Valley of God's Island. "Rox is very strong, please pay attention to safety." Okul wiped the blood that overflowed from the corner of his mouth, calmed down the sword energy in his body, stood up, said to the 4 people next to him, and then rushed forward at the head. The other people didn't flinch, they took a breath and rushed forward. At the entrance of the passage, Kaido took the lead and kept up with Carl. Thunder 8 trigrams. He charged while clearing the marine soldiers in front of him. Under his violent attack, not many marine soldiers could withstand the second attack. Carl was the first echelon to rush forward, and he belonged to the second echelon. On the other side of the battlefield, Borsellino stood in midair after dodging Julian's attack. 8-foot beautiful Magatama. What? No, stop. At first, Julian thought it was attacking him, but he didn't expect that the attack was actually aimed at the marine soldiers resisting on the channel. Suddenly, hundreds of marines suffered a fatal blow. Julian jumped on the spot, came directly to the side of Borsellino, and punched out suddenly. Julian's anger seemed to be in the air, making bursts of whistling sounds. "Have you ever been kicked by a light?" Borsellino came to Julian's side in a flash and kicked out his right foot suddenly. Julian's body seemed to be folded and slammed to the ground. Boom! A lot of dust was raised on the ground. Unleash observation haki and feel Julian's powerful life force within the mouth. Then he waved his lightsaber and rushed towards Julian. Gravity Knife Tiger. On the other side of the passage, Yishao was facing Marine Vice Admiral Patton. He became a pirate at such a young age, so he is not a good person. Patton looked at the powerful kid in front of him, and a trace of jealousy flashed in his heart. His talent is not good to begin with, and he became Vice Admiral because of his family connections, otherwise he would not be able to be classified as Vice Admiral based on his strength. So seeing the young Yishao in front of him actually being able to fight with him, the jealousy in his heart became more and more uncontrollable. "I can't pretend you didn't hear it." A trace of anger flashed through Yishao's blue eyes. After getting to know each other over the past few years, he knew that there was no clear distinction between the so-called Marines and pirates. Pirates are extremely vicious, killing countless people and doing anything. Most pirates are evil people, but Marine is not much better. The dirty things Marine has done over the years are no less than what pirates have done. In order to please the celestial dragons, they slaughtered cities and countries at every turn. The reason why there was no scandal about the celestial dragons in the world was because all the surrounding countries and small islands they saw were massacred. That's why the news was so tightly covered, but with the spread of the news from Mormoris, these things couldn't be concealed at all in the past few years, and they had long been known to the world, so people now don't have a good impression of Marine. The field expands. Sparrow, who ate the yuyu fruit, is no longer ordinary now. A heavy rain fell within a radius of 100 meters around him, forming a gravity swamp. Each raindrop weighed 1,000 kilograms. When a weak person came in, just a few raindrops would knock him to the ground and he would never get up again. Moreover, the raindrops have erosion and corrosive effects, so even if opponents of equal strength fight against him, they will not have an advantage at all. "What is this?" A marine curiously reached out and took the raindrops. Ah! The next moment, a big hole was corroded out of his palm, and he wailed in pain. Marine Vice Admiral Mori shouted with a livid face when he saw Marine's miserable condition. "Everyone, get out of here. Go back, go back." Mori watched as only a few hundred Marines on the edges retreated, while thousands of Marines in the center fell to the ground. Mori's eyes were red and tears of blood flowed out. Damn pirates. Covering his entire body in military colors, Haki rushed straight towards Sparrow. Sparrow looked like he was the Vice Admiral again and immediately summoned the raindrops in his hand, rain arrows. A large number of arrows composed of summoned raindrops were shot towards Mori. At first, he thought that the raindrops could not penetrate his body covered with armament Haki, so he ignored the flying arrows. Chi chi chi. But when the first arrow hit him, bursts of white smoke appeared on his body, and he felt a little bit of pain. Looking at the place where the body surface was hit, his expression became serious. It seemed that he could not carry the flying arrow without any harm. Finger pistol. The large number of marines that had just been attacked by Sparrow began to retreat towards the left and rear with each other supported. Some of them had their cheeks corroded off, and some had their arms and legs corroded off. Anyway, none of them were intact. Along the way, he helped the fellow marines who were still wailing on the ground and evacuated toward the left and rear together. Bang! Boom! And on that huge passage, Kaido was waving his mace, almost approaching the Valley of Gods. The Valley of the Gods looks like a big round pancake. The semicircle in front is the landing place of the Valley of the Gods, where marines and some soldiers are stationed. The semicircle behind is the Palace of the Celestial Dragons, the residence of a large number of slaves, and the sacrificial site of the Celestial Dragons. Between the two semicircles, there is a continuous line of mountains, which just blocks the intersection between the two semicircles. Carl came here first. My classmate, it should be right here. He first turned his head and looked at the pirates who were chasing behind him. Valley of Gods, let everyone see your true face. Nine heavens thunder crack. A hint of burgundy flashed across his eyes, and the rich conqueror's haki wrapped around Fang Tian's painted halberd. The next moment, the whole person jumped into the air, swung Fang Tian's painted halberd in a semicircle, and suddenly struck it down hard. Boom! There was a loud noise, and the entire island shook. Everyone fighting turned their attention here. And the sound came from the other side of the island. Which untouchable is he? He actually broke my back garden. I saw that the mountains in front of me were split into a road in an instant, and on the opposite side was a celestial dragon wearing a glass mask, looking over here. Carl dodged, and like a thunderbolt, he passed through a place hundreds of meters long, came to the celestial dragons, and lifted him up with his right hand. No! Put down Lord Celestial Dragons. The guard next to him rushed forward to stop Carl. Carl looked at the pirates behind him. There is a treasure ahead, go for it. Using a little force with his right hand, he directly crushed the head of the celestial dragons in front of him and waved Fang Tian's painted halberd. Thunder half-moon slash. He swept across dozens of people in front of him, cutting them off out of thin air, and even the corpses could not be pieced together. Oh, follow Lord Carl's footsteps. Come on, the treasure is ahead. A large number of pirates began to rush forward on the road opened by Carl. At this moment, the battlefield officially expanded to the entire island. Chapter 163. Massacre of Celestial Dragons. Garp, you had to stop me. Ha ha ha. Seeing Garp about to rush towards the island, Rox waved the black dragon and knocked him back with a single sweep. The expressions of the 5 god knights next to them changed drastically. Their responsibility was to protect the celestial dragons. Now a celestial dragons died in front of them, and they could not escape the blame. Oh, celestial dragons is dead, that's great. This scene happened to be shown to the whole world by Morris. All those who had been oppressed by the celestial dragons cheered and jumped. I want to go to sea, I want to be a pirate. It's just that this F***king life is too much. As the celestial dragons died majestically in front of them, a wave of people going to sea to become pirates suddenly started all over the world. The era of great pirates has arrived early. Within the mouth, Borsellino opened his mouth wide. He did not expect that Carl's blow directly opened a hole in the mountains. Julian stood panting to the side. Pooh, pirates, don't be too arrogant. What will happen even if you go in? Julian pulled off his tattered clothes, revealing his strong skin. There were bloodstains everywhere on his body, but he was not afraid at all. He waved his fist and rushed towards Borsellino. Well, it's really tricky. Borsellino twisted his lips. He didn't expect that Julian in front of him could not pour water from his physical training and organized powerful attacks many times, but he still had the strength to stand up. This instantly reminded him of Halil, who was still on Cake Island. Halil, as a fishman, doesn't want to eat the devil fruit, so he made his body so that it can block cuts from ordinary swords even when it's not covered with armament haki. It can be said to be a reduced version of a steel balloon. Of course, this also relies on Thunder Tiger's demon subduing Vajra Fist. After practicing the demon suppressing Vajra Fist, the body can be made as hard as steel, and by eating a large amount of Sea Kings, this characteristic can be fully utilized. If you are tough, you won't be able to find his shortcomings or direction of attack. Although the Julian in front of him was still a little worse, in his opinion, he was like a turtle that had no idea what to eat. It's really smelly and hard. Light speed kick. Borsellino dodged and came to Julian's side, kicked him away with his frightened face, and then kept moving around in the air, kicking Julian around like a balloon, and finally in midair, raised his right foot and smashed it down. Boom! Julian fell suddenly and fell deeply into the ground. Etc. Kong, who was next to Rox, looked at the Knights of God who were about to fly towards the island and shouted quickly. He couldn't forget that it was because of this vulnerability that Rox defeated him one by one in the first place. Ha ha ha. You guys really don't have a long memory. Naturally, Rox would not miss such a wonderful opportunity. He rushed forward and caught the last person, crushing his head with his left hand. The four people in front quickly turned their heads and exclaimed. But it was too late. Leaving Rox with their back was the stupidest decision they ever made in the world, wielding the black dragon. Kamui. In the flash of lightning, the four people in front had no time to resist. After the sword energy passed through the three of them, Ochre stretched out his iron fist to block it. Damn Rox. After hastily resisting, Ochre's left hand flew out directly. Okul knew that they would not be able to enter the Valley of the Gods without defeating Rox. And just when Rox was about to swing the black dragon and give him a fatal blow, he suddenly stopped. Seeing this perfect opportunity, Ochre quickly turned around and ran towards the Valley of Gods. Old guys. He turned his head and looked outside the Valley of Gods. 5 people were flying towards this direction at extremely fast speeds in the air. They were the 5 elders. Garp came to Kong's side. Can you still persist? Ah, this old bone can still move. Rox held up the black dragon and pointed the sword towards the island with a flash of light. Little ones, the way forward has been opened for you. Charge towards the island. Ouch! A large number of pirates were inspired and gathered into a torrent, striding towards the interior of the Valley of Gods. The Marines approaching were unable to resist, and a large number of Marine vice-admirals had been restrained, unable to free their hands to stop this large number of pirates. As a large number of pirates rushed towards the island, Borsellino and others were also surrounded by the crowd, fighting and walking towards the Valley of the Gods. Damn, it's still too late. When the 5 elders were on the horizon, they had already seen a large number of pirates rushing towards the island. Countless celestial dragons died under the swords of the pirates. The land on the island began to expand from the edge to the island. Inside, it was gradually dyed red. Untouchable, let me go first. Untouchable. The celestial dragons also raised their golden pistols and fired projectiles at the ferocious-looking pirates. But these bullets were not worth mentioning among some pirates. Is this the celestial dragons? It's so weak? A pirate cut off the head of celestial dragons with one knife, holding his glass cover, his face even more ferocious. A large number of slaves began to struggle and resist, throwing the guards and celestial dragons to the ground one after another, and began to bite with their hands and teeth. The scene became uncontrollable in an instant. Bola, bola. Moxie, moxie. Lord Carl, the mission is accomplished. Listening to Jennifer's voice coming from the phone, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. Evacuate quickly. After saying this, he hung up the phone directly because he also felt the 5 powerful auras on the horizon. Step aside. Damn you untouchables. Okul came all the way and killed the pirates in front of him one by one. But there were too many pirates, which seriously affected his path. At this moment, Kaido on the side saw Ochre who was killing people in the crowd, and a ferocious smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Thunder 8 trigrams. Brandished the mace and hit Ochre directly on the head. Boom. Bang bang bang. Okul did not expect that there was such a powerful pirate in the crowd. His left arm was cut off and his physical strength was severely depleted. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been knocked back dozens of meters by Kaido's thunderous 8 trigrams. Untouchable. Okor quickly stood up from the ground, adjusted his breathing, and swung his right fist at Kaido. A large number of marine soldiers also rushed to the island following the pirates, including Monkey D. Dragon. His observation haki has been on since he arrived on the island, but the chaotic scene in front of him and the wailing of a large number of slaves kept replaying in his mind. Now he was doubting himself. Is Marine's mission to protect these garbage? Are such celestial dragons really worthy of their protection? Seeing the tens of thousands of slaves on the island and their tortured bodies, the faith in his heart collapsed. Is it so painful for you? At this moment, observation Haki ushered in sublimation and understood the voice of empathy. You can deeply feel the experiences of each slave, as if these experiences have happened to you, and there is severe pain all over your body. Ha 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 ha. Celestial dragons. Bloody tears flowed from the corners of his eyes. Chapter 164. Peter's death and battle inside the palace of the Valley of the Gods. We received a letter from Mr. Carl. We need to evacuate immediately. Jennifer hung up the phone and looked at Bai-Hu and Smith aside. It's up to you. Smith directly turned the white tiger into a stone as big as a thumb. Then Jennifer and Smith entered Bai-Hu's body directly. Ha ha ha, don't worry. After Bai-Hu saw the two people coming in, he stretched out 2 small feet from the small stone. He strode away in the designated direction, and Jennifer pointed the direction to him through the pointer in his body. Smith on the side was already lying in the mountains of gold, laughing loudly. The fishmen on the side quickly brought wine and food. Although the eyes of these fishmen were full of envy, they were not excited about it. They know that being able to walk openly in the new world is entirely due to Lord Carl, and these Murlocs have been collecting sunken ships at the bottom of the sea in recent years. This is not the first time I have seen such an amount of gold. However, although Carl makes money quickly, he spends money even faster. For just one research institute, the annual consumption has reached tens of billions of belly. Not to mention the continuous construction of 56 islands in the desert sea area for nearly 4 years. More than tens of billions of dollars are spent every year. Now these 56 islands are closely connected through reclamation and construction through the maritime railway tracks provided by the research laboratory. If you want to go from one island to another, you only need to take a 10-minute sea train to get there. Moreover, over the years, it has continued to recruit slaves from all over the world and civilians who were forced to flee due to war. The population of the entire desert sea area has exceeded the 100 million mark. There are approximately 17.8 million people allocated to each island. White Tiger walked out of the palace cautiously, and was met by a large number of pirates and guards fighting. Naturally, they had no intention of joining them. Instead, they chose a direction without any fighting and began to run quickly towards the outside of the island. Their mission is to take the gold and devil fruit out of the island. Is the war already here? Fortunately we prepared quickly. Jennifer looked at the constant fighting outside and said happily. After hearing this, Smith also walked to the window and looked outside. Yeah, I didn't expect that the war would burn out so quickly and we would already be here. Is that Mr. Carl? Jennifer suddenly exclaimed. Even Bai-Hu paused in his steps and turned his head to look in that direction. I saw a red giant hundreds of meters tall, constantly fighting with several tiny figures in the sky. It should be the true form of Lord Carl's Titan. I didn't expect to see it here. Hurry up and pick up the pace. Master Carl has transformed into his true form as a Titan, which means that the ferocity of the battle has reached a new level. Bai-Hu shuddered when he heard this. He knew how powerful Lord Carl was after transforming into his true form as a Titan, so he quickly quickened his pace and ran towards the outside of the island. Carl on the other side did indeed meet the first opponent he was seriously waiting for in his life. Thunder Swamp. The next moment Carl stood up and flew into the sky. A huge lightning swamp appeared in a radius of nearly 10,000 meters. These dense thunder and lightning formed plasma bombs one after another, heading towards Wacholi Saint attack. After the 5 elders joined the battlefield, 3 of them immediately supported Kong and Garp. The 5 surrounded rocks, and the attack was airtight. The other 2 people came to Carl's side and attacked him brazenly. Feeling the terrifying atmosphere of the thunder and lightning swamp, Peter Saint immediately transformed into a poisonous dragon hundreds of meters long. Zone Fantasy Beast Species. Carl was surprised because the poisonous dragon in front of him looked so much like Kaido's blue dragon fruit form. The poisonous dragon stepped forward and entangled Carl's body. Their huge bodies fell to the ground, and the entire island was shattered into a small piece. Within the mouth, Borsellino stood in midair, folded his arms and looked at the battle in the distance and exclaimed. At his feet was an obviously unconscious Julian. Sakazuki looked at the situation on the island and became more and more angry. Justice is not like yours. Everyone who has been brainwashed over the years knows that water can carry a boat, but it can also overturn it. Having lost the basis of the broad masses of the people, this world government is on the verge of collapse and has entered a countdown. Gravity Knife Tiger. I agree very much. Under the leadership of Borsellino, the young pioneers have also arrived on the island and saw countless slaves in this luxurious scene. They could even sense what they saw and heard, and there were a large number of slaves wailing under their feet. Everything in front of them made them look at the celestial dragons running around in front of them with a look of resentment. Kai he he he. Shadow giant soldier. Under Kofi's horrified look, a huge shadow giant soldier appeared behind him and smashed him into the ground with a giant fist. The person who came was none other than the 3-meter-tall Gecko Moria. It looks like everyone is safe. Because Borsellino took the lead in solving Julian, with his support, Sakazuki, Yishao, Perispero, Katakuri, Gecko Moria and others successively defeated the vice admiral in front of them. Then it's treasure hunting time. Gecko Moria didn't know when he got greedy for money and took the lead in rushing towards the gorgeous palace. Several others also shook their heads with a wry smile, followed his pace, and rushed towards the palace of celestial dragons. The battlefield is now very corrupt, and Marine cannot resist the large number of pirates rushing into the island. With a large number of Marines and guards dead, some pirates have begun to search for loot on the celestial dragon's palace. This pillar is made of gold, carry it away. This floor is also made of gold. We can carry it away as well. The pirates who rushed into the palace started to chop each other with long knives in their hands. When they learned that the pillars, floors, and many parts of the room were made of gold, they immediately showed a greedy expression and began to relocate. As for the celestial dragons in the field, hundreds of them had been killed or injured. Wu Laoxing stood on the edge of the battlefield and looked helplessly at the falling celestial dragons inside. A Carl and a Rox had already restrained all 5 of them. You insulted the dragon with this devil fruit. Carl stood up with his left hand on the ground, holding on to his right hand, and Peter's dragon head said with a mocking look. When using the phantom beast species, the attack method is just entanglement. It seems that leaving the fantasy beast species to the celestial dragons is really a waste of resources. Damn, how could it be? Why are you so powerful? Peter looked at his body, which was gradually being pulled apart by Carl, with a look of disbelief on his face. Carl said indifferently, "What else could it be? You are too weak." The next moment, 2 giant hands pulled the poisonous dragon's mouth and suddenly tore it to both sides. No, Peter only had time to scream, before his body was torn in half from the dragon's mouth. Purple blood spread all over the ground, and pieces of white smoke rose from the ground. It was obvious that the poisonous dragon's blood was also deeply poisonous. Peter. Wo Choli next to him only had time to let out an exclamation. He didn't expect that Peter would be torn in half by Carl after just a brief confrontation. A trace of panic flashed across his face, knowing that Peter's strength was a little higher than him. You're the only one left. You 5 elders will be removed from the list today. When Wo Choli heard Carl's words, he said with disdain, "Do you think you can do it?" 5 elders actually introduces 1 person from each family and rotates every 20 years. So as long as Celestial Dragons continues, 5 elders will continue. Chapter 165. Im's attention at the same time. Roger and others who came out of the Celestial Dragon's vault had already imprinted the words on the red historical text. It seems it's not too late to come out. After Roger came out, he looked at the battlefield and saw the rocks in the distance at a glance. As long as you don't fight Carl, it's fine. Sunbelt took the lead and rushed into the battlefield holding a harpoon. Roger pulled out Ace. Leave rocks to me. The whole person rushed directly to the rocks in the distance. Looks like we have to fight. Rayleigh also waved the western sword on his waist and followed Roger's footsteps. The Roger pirates officially joined the battlefield. God avoids. Roger waved Ace and suddenly slashed at Rox from behind. Rox had already felt the attack from behind, so he pulled out the black dragon and turned around to resist. Kamui. The 2 attacks did not touch each other, But Ling Ran's aura was released to the surroundings at this moment. The 3-5 elders on the scene nodded and looked at each other before rushing to Carl's side. Letting dog eat dog among the pirates was what they wanted to see most. And if they don't go to support, another 5 elders may die and watch Holy Saint. Roger, do you also want to be a traitor to the D clan? Rox asked Roger in front of him. Roger spoke slowly with a solemn face. You're too dangerous. After such a long voyage, he gradually discovered some secrets about the D family. Although it was not very clear, he knew that he seemed to be waiting for someone in the legend. And after passing the Fishmen Island several times, I heard some intermittent words from inside. The king will be born in 25 years. Now is not the time to abide by the ancient agreement. Similar people, but not similar time. Through these intermittent words, Roger can determine that a king of the Sea King's family will be born on the Fishmen Island, and the time will be around 1508. Moreover, the ancient agreement should be an agreement between someone and the fishman at the bottom of the sea. In the last sentence, he felt that he should be talking about himself, so it seems that the person who can lead the world to undergo major changes has not been born yet. Similar people reminded him of himself. Maybe that person might be his son. These years of traveling all over the world were not in vain. I vaguely learned about a legendary devil fruit, the rubber fruit. It is said that rubber fruit has never been controlled by the world government for hundreds of years. There have been rumors in underground intelligence that rubber fruit is to be collected, but no one has ever been able to truly keep it. So in order to pave the way for his son, he will collect this fruit and give it to his son at the end. Stop talking nonsense. You two are traitors of the D clan. Rox gritted his teeth and swung the black dragon suddenly. If a new king is going to be born in this world, why can't it be me? After knocking Roger away, black and red aura erupted from his body. The violent conqueror's haki directly knocked back Garp and Roger. I didn't expect to join forces with you today, Garp. Ha ha ha, who would have thought of that? Rox looked at the two whispering to the side and suddenly became angry. Kamui. 100-meter-long sword energy rushed towards the two of them. Iron Fist. Fall. God avoids. Boom. The attacks of the three people cancelled each other out in the air. Rock's body swayed and disappeared from everyone's sight in an instant. Not good. Kong has been seriously injured and cannot participate in the battle. But his keen intuition tells him that Rock's target is not Garp and Logic, but the 5 elders who are flying towards Carl. Get out of the way. When Satan Saint heard Kong's exclamation, he quickly turned his head and saw Rox attacking them at an alarming speed. He quickly kicked Nasarang Saint away, trying to avoid Rock's frontal attack. Rox saw Nasarang Saint being pushed away and immediately turned his target to Sartan Saint. Nasarang Saint didn't know what happened when he was pushed away, but the next moment, he saw an arm flying in the air. How could he not recognize this arm when he and Satan Saint had been 5 elders for so many years? Whose is it? Nasarang Shane roared. No, Satan Saint clutched his left shoulder. His body unsteadily hit the ground, and he fell to the ground in pain. Although he pushed Nasarang Saint away in time, he became Rock's new target. His left hand was exposed in front of Rox. Naturally, Rox would not miss this opportunity and cut off his left hand directly. Rock's speed and strength shocked everyone present. His strength was far beyond their imagination. Is this the 5 elders? Rox looked at Satan Saint, who fell to the ground. A trace of contempt flashed in his eyes. In his opinion, the 5 elders were just like that. Satan Saint's face was pale, and he endured the severe pain and struggled to get up from the ground, his heart filled with regret and anger. I regret that I didn't react in time just now, which put me in danger. In this situation, let alone supporting Wo Choli, I might be responsible for it. Rox, you devil, I will not let you go, Satan Saint said through gritted teeth. Rox burst into laughter upon hearing this. As for you, you even protected yourself and still want to take revenge. You're really overestimating your capabilities. After saying that, Rox disappeared again and continued to attack Satan Saint. Suffer death. Rox shouted loudly. Sartan Sacred's heart tightened, and he quickly used his abilities, waving the long sword in his hand, and kept slashing one after another, trying to block Rock's attack, but found that no matter how he resisted, he was vulnerable to Rox. Rox the figure easily passed through the sword energy and struck towards his body. Satan Saint's face was ferocious, and he held the sword tightly with both hands. His heart was full of despair. He knew that there was a high probability that he would not be able to escape this time. At this moment, a red light shot from a distance and hit Rox's body accurately. Rox froze and was forced back dozens of meters by the sword energy. Who is it? Rox looked at the direction of the light in shock and anger. It turned out to be Roger. Seeing Roger appear, Satan Saint suddenly felt a glimmer of hope in his heart. After getting up from the ground, he quickly flew towards the island. Roger, you always mess up my good things. It seems that I can't keep you today. Rox did not continue to attack the 5 elders in front of him, but let them go away. Rox looked at Roger and Garp walking towards him, with a trace of fear flashing in his eyes. Through the brief exchange just now, he knew that Roger and Garp were about the same strength as him. If he fought with them for a long time, he wouldn't be able to. Odds. Roger, why did you get involved in this? Rox asked. He was a little confused. He is also a member of the D clan. Does he really want to be a dog for the celestial dragons? Roger. Your actions have threatened the peace of the entire world. Rox laughed. Do you think there will really be peace in this world? Stop dreaming. As long as the celestial dragons are still there will be no true peace in this world. Roger raised his ace. Don't I know what you are thinking? Whether there is true peace or not in this world, that person will not be you. After speaking, Roger exuded a strong aura and pressed towards Rox. Rox felt Roger's momentum and his heart sank. He didn't really want to fight Roger right now, so he got up and flew towards the island. At this moment, in a mysterious room in Marijoy, a tall and thin figure slowly opened his eyes, with red coils wrapped around his eyes. Chapter 166. Uranus's attack? Have we reached this point? The mysterious man made a deep voice, opened his eyes, stood up from the stool and walked outside. Open the door and follow the long corridor. He came to a mysterious room. This room looked very sci-fi. There were various instruments inside. If Carl saw the scene in front of him, he would think that he had traveled back to the Blue Star. The mysterious man came directly to the control panel, which had various buttons. He stretched out his right hand and gently clicked the red button. Buzz! A mysterious sound sounded, and a special instrument in the underground of the Valley of Gods suddenly rotated slowly. No one noticed the dead celestial dragons at the scene. Their blood slowly flowed into the ground and into this special instrument. The sacrifice of the celestial dragons is a conspiracy in itself. A huge map appeared in front of Im's eyes. He pulled the map closer with both hands, and then clicked on one of the small islands. The next moment, the situation on the island was revealed before his eyes. It turned out that the island he clicked on was called the Valley of the Gods. When his eyes were fixed on a huge giant on the island, doubts came from the corner of his mouth. Are you an outlier? This is the Valley of Gods. What is this? Carl, who was fighting with several 5 elders, felt a flash of fear in his heart. This was a feeling he had never experienced before, as if he would die in the next second. He looked up at the sky and saw a faint bright spot in the uppermost sky. Is this Uranus? In the world of pirates, the only one who could give him such a fatal feeling without launching an attack was the legendary Uranus. Ether element soul shaping. Wood element, Senju Buddha. Earth element big earthquake. The giant several hundred meters tall suddenly stopped and looked at the 5 elders in front of him for a moment, but in an instant, thousands of giant palms rose up behind him, each of which was several hundred meters long in diameter. No, retreat. Satan Saint was injured, so he did not participate in the battle, but seeing the giant hand falling quickly in front of him, he quickly shouted for everyone present to retreat. The next moment, thousands of huge Buddha's hands were slapping toward the ground, and dust filled the air in an instant. He even used earth elements to crack the ground in order to break up the island, which made it appear more realistic. Boom boom boom. A violent roar sounded. The entire island began to tremble uncontrollably. A falling star. Satan Saint endured the severe pain and swung a slash. Base. The sword flashed and several arms were cut off. The remaining 5 elders also avoided the attack. Doomsday Cannon. Carl clasped his hands and aimed Satan Street. It's already like this, and I still come to fight. It's really embarrassing for you, so I'll give you a ride first. The dark blue energy beam passed through Satan Saint's body in an instant, leaving him without a chance to react. The whole person turned into nothingness and disappeared into the air. Nishu Langsheng ran staggeringly towards the direction where Satan Saint disappeared. No, Satan Saint. Cut. With a snap, Carl's body was cut in half, but no blood flowed out. It turned out that Carl's huge form was made of pure energy. Carl stood on the giant's head and looked quietly at the 5 elders in front of him. Did it take you so long to find out? However, I really want your ability. The attack just now was radiated from the inside of the giant composed of pure energy. If his perception was correct, the Nasarang sacred palm in front of him should be holding the space fruit. HMPH, dirty people. A lowly servant is not worthy of having this kind of ability. Nasushiro Sheng looked at Carl with an unhappy expression. Moss Saint looked at Carl, who was standing on his head and slowly descending, with an angry look on his face. Stop talking nonsense and come together. They didn't expect that the people fighting them all this time were actually energy clones. They really looked down on them, the 5 elders. Although they are indeed relatively weak, at least they are still useful. Let this farce end. After I am operating, he stood up and left the room. In his opinion, no one could survive the attack of Uranus. As for Carl in the Valley of Gods, feeling the fatal threat coming from above his head, his real body immediately ran away. Whoosh! Boom! Sure enough, a beam of light shot down from the sky the next second, and Carl's clone, which was left in place, instantly turned into nothingness. A huge hole hundreds of meters deep appeared on the spot, which was exactly the same size as his size. Is this, Sir I am? The 5 elders looked at each other. The worst situation occurred, and they unexpectedly disturbed Sir I am. What's this? This huge energy attack directly made everyone on the island feel its power, and the ground beneath their feet began to tremble slightly. The island is about to collapse. At this time, a pirate stood up. He was under Newgate's banner. He had seen the power of Newgate's punch to shatter the island, and he also knew that the island in front of him was about to sink. What? The island is going to collapse? Hurry up. Move quickly. Evacuate immediately. A large number of pirates were no longer in the mood to fight, so they rushed to the Celestial Dragon's palace and began to move everything inside. Gia ha ha ha. And the pirates headed by the lion rushed towards the island crazily, because they knew that if the island sank, they would no longer be able to grab the treasure on the island. Bulu. The phone in Sengoku's arms rang. What? Evacuate quickly. After hanging up the phone, he had no intention of fighting Newgate anymore and called the Marine present to start organizing the members to evacuate. He led the remaining Marine executives to help up the unconscious teammates, and pack the bodies of some strong men, including most of the vice admirals who died on the battlefield. Due to time constraints, they were unable to pack the bodies of all their comrades. Although Newgate didn't know what it meant, thinking about the previous attack and looking at Sengoku, he felt that something was wrong. Many vice admirals and admirals also left the battle and began to cover Marines' evacuation. However, a large number of pirates were fearless and rushed directly to the island and began to remove everything they saw. What's the situation? Noti, Davis and others also left the battle group one after another. Looking at Marine retreating in the distance, they scratched their heads and were confused. Davis watched Marine retreat, thoughtfully. Looking like this, it's obviously related to the attack just now. What should we do? Fields, Sparrow, Long Yi, Borsellino and others came to Davis's side. Our mission has been completed. Let's withdraw and protect our ships first. Davis made a correct decision. Immediately, everyone began to follow Marine's evacuation route and ran to their ship. They encountered Marine along the way, but they did not fight with him. And Marine has no intention of fighting, because Sengoku has just conveyed a message. That is, the Celestial Dragons intend to destroy the Valley of the Gods directly, and the time is just 10 minutes later, so they have no time to waste. Chapter 167. The Sinking of the Valley of Gods. Damn it. Is this thing targeting me? Although Carl's figure became smaller and he was dodging everywhere on the battlefield, he could still feel the attack in the sky and locked him firmly. Even the several energy clones he released did not fool the eyes above his head. I really don't know how the attack in front of me targeted him. Rox, who rushed towards the island, was eventually caught up by Roger and Garp halfway, and the three of them launched a fierce battle in the air. The scene of the three people fighting directly accelerated the sinking of the Valley of Gods. The golden lion flew to the ruins of the island, touched the ground with his hand, and used the lion fruit ability. In an instant, dozens of treasure boxes flew into the sky under his control. When he was about to fly to the sky with these boxes, Powerful Country, Empty Shock, Tornado Axe, Slash Wave, Lin, Newgate, John, and Silver Axe attacked one after another, because the golden lion was too greedy and actually wanted to take away all the treasures. Naturally, they would not watch the golden lion snatch away all the treasures. Golden Lion looked at the angry people in front of him and knew that he couldn't get all the treasures, so he immediately gave up fighting for the fallen box. The remaining 10 treasure chests floated up to a high place and flew to the shore. It was good to be able to grab these. The final result was that Lin grabbed 5, Newgate grabbed 6, John grabbed 5, and Silver Axe grabbed 3. Boom! There was a sound on the ground, and the ground began to undulate. Several people with solemn expressions carried the treasure box and began to run towards the outside of the island. They knew that the island could not bear it and was about to break. Sengoku on the shore has already begun to sail away from the Valley of the Gods in a warship. He looked at Marine's body that fell to the ground on the island, and felt so sad that he couldn't even collect their bodies. His fist suddenly hit the fence of the warship. Ahem, Kong. Just then, Marshall Hill, who was on deck, called for Admiral Kong. I'm afraid it won't work anymore. From now on, Marine will be left to you. Marshall Hill sensed the constant destructive power in his body and knew that he would not die soon. At the moment, the only person who can succeed him is Kong. Sengoku is still relatively young and not so calm. Marshall Hill, you will be fine. Kong stepped forward and directly held Marshall Hill's arm. Feeling the coldness coming from his arm, his pupils shrank. Don't make any noise, just leave it at that. Kong held Marshall Hill's arm tightly and shed tears uncontrollably. When he touched Marshall Hill's arm, he felt the coldness on it. I understand. Kong took off his red-stained cloak and slowly covered Hill's body. Song, Marshall Hill. Let him go quietly. Kong shook his head. Sengoku seemed to have thought of something. This is really a disaster. The other members of the Roger Pirates saw that something was not going well and were already on their way to evacuate. On the battlefield, except for Carl, who was constantly dodging, there were only 3 people fighting between Rox and Roger Garp. Lin, Newgate and others had already retreated to the shore and were waiting quietly. In the distant sea, most people have been evacuated. Redfield, Long, Davis and others used observation hockey to sense the battlefield in the Valley of the Gods. This was the first time for a few of them to see Rox actually take action, and the shock to them was extraordinary. On the battlefield of the Valley of the Gods, Rox and Garp Roger were intertwined and fighting, their wild laughter ringing through the sky from time to time. You two are traitors. Rox changed his figure, used his fists and knives together, and kept attacking. He could already feel the physical strength of Garp and Roger declining. Don't be too arrogant, you guy. Garp already hated Rox a little. Hearing his provocation, he couldn't help but covered Armament Hockey's fist, wanting to beat Rox to death. He swung his fist and hit Rox directly in the head. Bang! Rox smiled coldly and gave a powerful counterattack with his fist. After blocking Garp's fist attack, he turned around and waved the Black Dragon to resist Roger's slash. Rox's blade, covered in black and red Conqueror's hockey, slashed at Roger. Roger's face was no better than that of Garp. He also felt how difficult Rox was. Regardless of physical skills, hockey or swordsmanship, Rox was second to none. Whoosh whoosh. Just 10 minutes later, countless light rains began to fall from the sky. In an instant, the light rain directly penetrated the entire Valley of Gods, and Carl was naturally hit several times. At this moment, there is silence between heaven and earth. Ah, Kamui! At this moment, only Rox's roar could be heard. After a few seconds, calm returned to the island, and there was no sound at all. What happened? At this moment, someone exclaimed. How so? What happened? With one exclamation after another, The injured people climbed up from the deck and came to the fence. I saw that the Valley of the Gods in front of me was slowly disappearing, visible to the naked eye. In just 10 seconds, the Valley of Gods disappeared before your eyes. What comes into view is the sea, empty, nothing. Damn world government. On the other side of the sea, the Roger pirates got on the boat and sailed towards the distance. When the final attack came down, several beams of light were directed at Rox and Roger. Roger and Garp ran towards the shore one after another, only Rox was firmly locked. Looking at the deserted and lifeless place behind, I thought that Rox must have died under those mysterious attacks. Even Mormoris in the sky was a little shocked. The whole world was in an uproar. What kind of attack was that? How come such a big island disappeared all of a sudden? The next moment, the live broadcast in front of me flashed a flash of white. After the energy attack was generated, a powerful magnetic field was formed, directly blocking the signal of the image phone bug. Carl! A mournful cry came from Linlin's mouth. Just because Carl's figure was no longer in front of him, and the paper of life in his hand slowly burned out. Mom! Parasparrow quickly stepped forward to help Linlin, who fainted. But the next moment, he saw that there was still a small piece of life paper in his hand that was not burning. He quickly glanced around and found that no one was there. After finding out, he secretly put him in his pocket and helped Linlin into the cabin. Set sail! Parasparrow announced the news sadly. He knew that if he continued to stay here, he might usher in Marine's next attack. This would be very detrimental to them who were already seriously injured, and John and others next to him were still watching eagerly. The death of Rox was a heavy blow to these cadres. Chapter 168. Curious Baruch the Golden Lion floating in the air controls a circular land and slowly descends. The atmosphere in the air became quite dull at this moment. Since Rox has died in the battle, I declare that the Golden Lion pirates are officially established. Anyone who wants to join can come on my ship. Golden Lion's roar gave new hope to all the pirates present. I go. Add me one. A large number of pirates began to board the Golden Lion's island. Newgate, what do you think? Newgate looked at the deserted sea in front of him. I also want to form my own pirate group and find my real family. Then let's part ways here. John looked at the blue dragon getting further and further away in the distance, and led the pirates to catch up with the blue dragon. Golden Lion saw that the people had almost arrived, and immediately took control of the floating island and floated towards the new world. See you next time, Newgate. A faint voice came from the horizon. Newgate shook his head and steered the ship away from here. As everyone slowly left, they all knew that the world structure would undergo serious changes from now on. Because this battle was spread through the videophone bug from beginning to end. Those who watched the death of celestial dragons were forced to weaken the concept of celestial dragons' rule. As for Marine's dragon, looking at everything happening on the island, he deeply felt that he was going to make a change. From this moment on, the whole world knew the news that Rox was dead. This news swept the whole world like a storm, causing a huge shock. No one expected that the Rox pirate, which was so powerful, would fall apart. The new world will usher in major changes. The Rox family will no longer be the only one, but will enter the stage of contention of 100 flowers. A large number of ambitious pirates will go to sea to compete for territory. As the news of Rox and Carl's death in battle continued to spread, New World ushered in a new war. 10 days passed quickly. During these 10 days, wars of various sizes continued in New World. In the past 10 days, as the news spread, many Rox territories in New World have been occupied by new pirates. Newgate, Linlin, Golden Lion and others also returned to the New World. As soon as they returned to the New World, they began to join in the grabbing of territory. It's just that Linlin of the Big Mom Pirates hasn't woken up yet, and the team is led by Redfield, Davis and others. Newgate stood on the bow of the ship and looked into the distance, his heart filled with emotion. Dad, what are you looking at? Young Marco ran to Newgate's side. Gu la la la. Newgate did not speak, but laughed. Golden Lion stood on his sky island, looking at Beehive Island, where John was stationed at this time. Ochaku and Silver Axe formed two pirate groups respectively and started wandering in the New World. At the same time, the Whitebeard Pirates, the Golden Lion Pirates, and the Big Mom Pirates were established one after another. They occupied most of Rock's territory and formed a three-legged situation in the New World. At this time in the Cake Island, well. Mom, you're awake. The moment he heard Charlotte Linlin's voice, Parasparrow ran in. The first thing Charlotte Linlin did was to ask about Carl's situation. How is Carl? Mom, Father Carl is fine. Parasparrow presented the paper of life belonging to Carl with both hands. Although a little bit of the paper of life has been burned, it is miraculously beginning to recover, but the recovery speed is a bit slow. Mom, it seems that Father Carl is fine, but I don't know where he went. Well. Seeing the state of life paper, Charlotte Linlin breathed a sigh of relief. By the way, Mom, there is something you need to deal with now. Wano-kuni rebelled. Well. I think they are impatient. Charlotte Linlin lifted the quilt and walked outside. 10 days ago, it was still in that mysterious secret room. You also know, right? Yes, it looks like the time has come. Then let us initiate some changes. Kazuki Sukiyaki was the first to lift his cloak, and the others also lifted their cloaks. They were the heads of various families. Then let's work hard together. After finishing speaking, Kazuki Sukiyaki walked out of the secret room. Then today, Wanakuna's warriors began to attack the Fishman army. Quickly report to your lord, Wano-kuni, it's against the law. The originally peaceful Wano-kuni suddenly became a war. Because Wano-kuni had been very honest in the past 3 years, Carl sent his masters to take charge. So on the entire front, the Murlocs were retreating steadily, retreating all the way to Rabbit Well and hiding in the huge fortress they built. The fort is easy to defend but difficult to attack, making it a good place to take shelter. Thousands of Murlocs were killed and injured during this process, and most of the land in Wano-kuni was returned to the rule of the Kazuki family, except for Rabbit Well. Go to sea, target Wano-kuni. Charlotte Linlin took Davis and others to Wano-kuni. At this time, in West Blue, an uninhabited desert island near the Red Line, Baruch and his party were resting on the island. Their next stop was the Grand Line. A pirate who was fishing on the shore suddenly saw something floating not far away, like a human figure. Captain, what do you think that is? What? Baruch walked to the shore curiously and raised his telescope to observe carefully. That is, quick. Go quickly and salvage it. Baruch recognized at first sight that the person floating on the sea was Lord Carl who had saved him in the Sabaody archipelago. Captain Baruch, who is this? Do you know him? As Carl was fished ashore, his body began to tremble slightly after hitting the ground, but the trembling was too small to be detected by the naked eye. Deputy Wesker had never seen Carl before, and Carl's face was covered in blood now. If he wasn't an acquaintance, he might not be able to recognize him. And looking at Carl's huge body, he must be a giant. Baruch picked up the handkerchief on the side and began to wipe Carl's wound carefully. This is my great benefactor. Wesk said with a shocked look on his face. Is this, Captain Carl? I have heard before that Captain Baruch was originally a slave, and was then rescued by a mysterious man in the Sabaody archipelago, and this mysterious man was Carl. Many of their pirate groups came from the Sabaody archipelago, and they have always been proud to join Carl's pirate group. It's just that their experiences in the past 3 years have taught them that New World is full of strong people, so they want to practice more, but they didn't expect to see Carl here. What, is this Mr. Carl? Hearing Wesker's shock, the pirate fishing on the side put down his fishing rod and ran over. As the blood on Carl's face was wiped clean, the pirate recognized him at a glance. It's true, Lord Carl, come and see. The pirates who heard the sound also ran over. Chapter 169. Carl wakes up. Riot in Wano-kuni. They built a wooden house for Carl on site, put him in, and lit a fire at the door. Let me tell you, when I was still in the Sabaody archipelago, a giant suddenly rushed in and defeated the slave trader with a few blows. Then the man introduced himself and said his name was Carl. If you want to join him, you can go to New World to find him. Since then, I have been proud to join Carl's pirate group. Having said this, Baruch paused for a moment, as if recalling. Captain, keep talking, it's just that I haven't heard enough yet. Baruch said angrily after being interrupted, you bunch of brats. But after I came to New World, I realized that Lord Karl didn't have his own pirate group. And according to Lord Karl, he may establish his own pirate group in the future. So there must be some considerations in this regard. Captain Baruch, you are so lucky, Velas said mockingly. His eyes were red and he forced himself not to think about his time as a slave. At that time, I only knew that someone rescued us, but we were locked in a black cloth and never knew who the person outside was. After we ran out and got to know each other, we found out that the person who saved us was named Karl, so he joined your team. Yes, yes. At least half of the pirates present nodded. They were all slaves who had been freed in the Sabaody archipelago. Karl was standing in a black space at this time. The black space has no brightness and seems endless. Sizzle! Suddenly a golden light appeared in front of his eyes and shook him. After calming down for a while, he looked at the golden light. It turned out to be the system panel. Host. Lux D. Karl, bounty 3.5 billion belly. Fusion templates. Under one person, Lao Xianxi, stealing star Juyuishan, Luxing. During the Qin dynasty. The Mingyue sword Saint Gai Ni. Not fused. The demon fox little matchmaker was rich and powerful. Not fused. Zhenhun Street Cao Yanbing. Not fused. And the assassin Wu Luqi Qi, not fused. Skills. Armament Hockey Top, Observation Hockey Top, Conqueror's Top, Golden Light Spell, 5 Thunder Jungfa, Boxing Grandmaster, etc. Talent. Titan Strength Money, 378 billion belly. Items. Shaolin Great Returning Pill 13 bottles, Weiyuan Pill 9, Bloodline Pill 7 bottles, Fang Tian Wahi, Longchen Sword, Great Kue Dao Gaiyu Dao, Da Kue Dao Yinhe Dao. Devil Fruit. Asterisk 18 rating. A super strong man on the sea, half a step overlord and overall strength. But, how to get out? He looked at the dark space and sat cross-legged on the ground. Even if the system panel appears, he has no space to use now. The next moment, there was a sudden sound in my ears. Drink, the captain gives you a toast. The sound was vague, and he ran quickly in the direction from which the sound came. There was no sunlight in the space, and there was no concept of time. He ran for who knows how long, but he just saw a little light in front of him. As the light got closer, the sounds coming from outside became louder and louder. He ran to the aperture and walked directly through it without stopping. The next moment he suddenly opened his eyes. What came into view was a wooden house. He looked around and smelled the damp smell in the air. He knew that this wooden house had just been built recently. He was still covered with a warm quilt, but as he turned over, sections of the quilt fell off. It seemed that they were spliced together. When he looked outside the door, the stars outside were shining, and he happened to see Baruch and his group drinking not far away. As Karl stood up, the wooden house in front of him shattered into pieces. The cabin itself is made of wood, rather than being built directly. Master Karl, you're awake. Baruch heard the noise and turned to look at Karl, saying with a shocked expression. As for the others who were shocked speechless by Karl, they had never thought of communicating with such a strong man. I slept very comfortably. By the way, who are you? Karl walked to Baruch's side in a few steps and looked down at him. Baruch was so drunk that he woke up from his drunkenness. Just such a huge size gave him an invisible sense of oppression. Lord Karl, I was a slave in the Sabaody archipelago, you saved me. My name is Baruch. Sabaody archipelago, I have some impressions. Karl remembered. Sabaody archipelago saved the slaves. Wasn't it just when he returned to the New World from all over the world? It seems that more than 3 years have passed. Unexpectedly, time flies by so fast, and I have been in the pirate world for more than 4 years in the blink of an eye. By the way, Lord Karl, you? Baruch asked hesitantly. Because Baruch also received the news, which clearly stated that Karl had died in the Valley of the Gods. Although he didn't know what happened, it also made him curious. When he first saw it on the sea, he thought it was Lord Karl's body and wanted to collect it. Unexpectedly, while wiping the wound, I suddenly felt the pulse coming from Master Karl. It's nothing, a small wound, nothing to worry about. Thank you for your hard work. If you need anything, you can come to New World to find me. How long has it been since the Valley of Gods? Karl asked. Baruch handed the newspaper to Karl and said at the same time, 11 days have passed since the Valley of the Gods incident. Okay, Baruch, right? Baruch immediately stood up straight and replied, yes. Karl looked up at the sky, confirmed the general direction, and then said to Baruch, now, there are still things to deal with, so I won't stay here any longer. Take care. After Karl finished speaking, before Baruch could open his mouth, he suddenly jumped up and flew towards the new world. Captain, let's just leave. Velas stared at Baruch with a look of resentment. Baruch immediately yelled, I've already left. If you have the ability, come. Just as he was about to continue speaking, he suddenly lost his voice and a square piece of white paper slowly floated down from the air. Life paper? Is it Mr. Karl's life paper? Velas stood up and reached out to grab it from Baruch's hand. Baruch directly kicked Velas to the ground. You go to one side. With this life paper, most parts of the new world will be able to survive safely. Wesk stood up quickly and looked at the life paper with hope. Then Captain, we. Ha ha ha. Baruch suddenly laughed. What are you waiting for, kids? Stop drinking. Rush to new world. Ouch. Yang Fan sets sail. They know that with this life paper, being in the new world will not be as difficult as before. Why do you say that? Because the breath of life is engraved on the paper of life. Some pirates who are strong enough will know who the paper belongs to through the breath on the paper, so as long as they don't meet Marine, they will most likely have smooth sailing in the new world. At this time, Wano Kuni began to bleed and drift everywhere. Well, it seems like you don't want to live a good life anymore. Charlotte Linlin, Davis, Phil Redfield and others have also come to Wano Kuni first. Led by him, the Fishman army guarding Rabbit Well began to counterattack. Powerful country. Taoyuan Shirataki, Kazuki Sukiyaki, firmly resisting Charlotte Linlin's attack. As for why there is no Kazuki Oden, it is because as soon as Wano Kuni happened, Kazuki Oden was secretly imprisoned on Cake Island, but he didn't know it. Chapter 170. Bloody Massacre. Charlotte Linlin, Karl is dead, and your good days are coming to an end. Kazuki Sukiyaki, leading thousands of warriors, started a close fight with the Fishman army. Well, old guy, you can't see it anymore. Linlin's eyes were cold. Mainly because I didn't expect that Wanakuna's people would actually betray him. Karl had also talked about Wanakuna's problem before, but they had been very honest in the past 3 years, which led to Clay and others being negligent. This led to this tragedy. If we had sent manpower to Wano Kuni as soon as possible after withdrawing from the Valley of the Gods, such a thing would not have happened. Kill me and leave no one who dares to resist. Clay commanded a large Murloc army in the rear. For this battle, they mobilized an army of 500,000 Murlocs from the Desert Sea. The purpose is to wipe out Wanakuna's resistance at once. Bloodcut. Redfield, who was flying in the sky, flew down from time to engage in fierce battles with some warriors. Shadow Bat. He summoned thousands of bats and flew towards the samurai legions rushing towards him. These bats are huge, each nearly a meter tall, flashing red eyes revealing sharp fangs. Although the warriors kept waving their swords to fight against them, some people were still bitten by bats from time to time. The blood of the bitten person was instantly sucked dry, and he fell to the ground like a mummy. Run! What kind of monster is this? A large number of warriors began to retreat, but unfortunately there was no room for retreat. The entire sky was already shrouded in bats. Well, from time to time, people were caught by bats in the air, sucked their blood and fell down. In just a few minutes, hundreds of people died under the bat's mouth. The bat passed the sucked blood to Redfield. Redfield closed his eyes and rested, with a satisfied smile on his face. This blood kept increasing his strength, and he felt that his strength was soaring. Because of Karl's rules, he was not allowed to harm civilians at will, but these people in front of him were those who betrayed them, so they could use such cruel methods. Fire from heaven. Charlotte Linlin stepped on Zeus and threw Prometheus to the ground. A large amount of flames erupted from Prometheus, and the fire visible to the naked eye burned the mummy in front of him crazily. No, Kazuki Sukiyaki shouted sadly. He didn't expect such a tragic massacre to happen. Because Carl did not come to Wano Kuni with Charlotte Linlin, and because they had been secretly plotting rebellion during their years in Wano Kuni, it was not clear that Carl and Charlotte Linlin were husband and wife. Just receiving the news of Carl's death shocked them so much that they immediately started a wave of resistance. I didn't expect to receive such a tragic blow in just 10 days. I surrender. Kazuki Sukiyaki roared, and everyone who was fighting on the field stopped their attacks. The people who stopped could not help but shed tears of sadness as they looked at the tragic death of their compatriots at their feet. They did not expect such consequences. The fishmen, on the other hand, showed resentment. They didn't expect Wanakuna's people to actually kill so many of their compatriots. Charlotte Linlin is not a good person either. Although I haven't read the book, I still know the name White-Eyed Wolf. I want to surrender, but it's too late. Follow my orders, leave no one behind. Charlotte Linlin roared, swung the Emperor Blade, and struck at Kazuki Sukiyaki. Upon hearing Charlotte Linlin's order, the fishmen present roared loudly, and all of them agreed. Come on, leave no one behind. A little, Perospero had known this scene for a long time, and he started to rush towards the battlefield with his younger brothers and sisters. When Wano Kuni starts killing the fishmen, reconciliation between the two parties becomes impossible. Because under Carl's influence over the years, they know how important their comrades are. To put it simply, you can make trouble as you please, but outsiders can't do it. Kazuki Sukiyaki knows that no matter how much he regrets, it will be of no use. At present, only by working hard can we gain a chance of survival. Listen to my order and retreat. He gritted his teeth and issued the last order, hoping that only a few of them could escape. Although he knew that the hope was slim, it was better than dying here. But what he didn't know was that on the further outskirts, there was a larger fishman army tightly surrounding this place. When they announced their rebellion, they had no hope of living, and none of them could leave. Charlotte Linlin and others arrived to clear out the rebel forces on Wano Kuni at once. Let us go. We were wrong. But no matter how the warriors in the field wailed, the fish people did not stop moving forward. The bats in the sky did not stop attacking, and despair hung over everyone. Within the mouth, 8-foot Magatama, Borsellino stood in midair, making orchid fingers with his hands, and countless rays of light shot towards the fleeing people. The massacre lasted until late at night. Tens of thousands of warriors were killed on this land, and their blood dyed dozens of kilometers around Rabbit Well Red. After this massacre, there was no force left to resist on Wano Kuni. The 5 major families of Kazuki were directly exterminated, and Kazuki Oden is still buried in the dark. I don't know what to say. The main reason is that Carl did not expect Linlin to be so ruthless and directly killed the samurai on Wano Kuni to extinction. At this time, Feng Yuya, who was on Cake Island, also received a strange signal. Why is this impossible? But looking at the message from the image phone bug in his hand, he knew that this had already happened. He looks bad, maybe he and Odin are under surveillance now. After forcing himself to calm down in the room, he walked out of the room. Fortunately, he didn't attract any attention along the way, but he could feel keenly that someone was following him. He came to Kazuki Odin's door and knocked gently. Which one? Odin, it's me. Kazuki Odin walked to the door, pulled it open, and opened it. Seeing that the person coming was Feng Yuya, he smiled and said, "Why are you here? Go in and say it." Feng Yuya also stretched out her right hand and pushed him directly into the door. After he entered the house, he first looked at each room and found that there was no one hiding there. Then he came and sat down next to Kazuki Odin. "I think you should take a look at this." He took out the video phone bug in his hand and showed it to Odin. "What, this isn't?" Just as he was about to exclaim, Feng Yuya stretched out her right hand to cover his mouth, shook her head slightly, and pointed toward the door. Kazuki Odin followed the direction of his finger and saw a few figures flashing outside the door. There was a trace of cold sweat on his face and he nodded slowly. "I know." Kazuki Odin quickly finished watching the video. He stood up and paced the room. "Yes, come with me." These years on Cake Island were not in vain. While traveling with Borsellino and others, he accidentally discovered a road that could lead to the outside of the island. He took Feng Yuya out of the back door, evaded the guard's detection, and escaped from Cake Island. Cake Island was too big, Sokazuki Oden and Feng Yuya also escaped for a few days before they discovered it. But by the time it was discovered, it was already too late. Chapter 171. The second main mission begins. In West Blue, Carl, who kept flying towards the New World, first flew to Upside Down Mountain and stopped on a peak. Because there was a dinging sound in my mind, which was the system prompt. The next second he followed the source of the system prompt and opened the task module. Side Mission 4, Main Mission 1 has been completed. The rewards are now distributed: 1 Thunder Dragon Egg from the Immortal World, 1 template, and 3 ordinary draws. You jumped out in time. Carl chuckled softly. Unexpectedly, after he woke up, the mission system would push the completed information to him. It seemed that the system also knew what preemptive information was. It just so happens that I have nothing to do at the moment, and there is nothing urgent in New World. I am waiting for him to return, so I can draw the prize and continue on my way. I just wonder how lucky he is now. With a thought in his mind, the golden disc slowly rotated. In the look of anticipation came, "Ding dong. Congratulations to the host for drawing the template gourd Little King Kong." Calabash Little King Kong, isn't this Calabash baby? Apparently, you didn't even need to read the introduction. I just don't know if I can inherit the magical powers of these 7 gourd babies. If I remember correctly, the gourd Little King Kong should have been a piece of sky-mending stone left in the lower realm. The eldest child has the Dharma of heaven and earth, the second child is able to travel thousands of miles, the third child is indestructible, the fourth child spits fire, the fifth child spits water, the sixth child is invisible, and the seventh child's precious gourd can transform into people. Carl thought about it, and he even wanted to use it himself. Ding dong, at this moment, the sound of the system woke him up again. Congratulations to host, you drew the Superman underpants from 100,000 Bad Jokes, the Dingai Pearl from Demon Boy, and the 9th grade useless elixir from Fantasy World. System, were you confused by Uranus's attack? You can get this good thing through a normal lottery. But hey, he clicked on Superman's underwear first. He wanted to see if this thing was worth an ordinary lottery. After all, this lottery could appear together with Ding Heizu and Millennium Spirit Ginseng, so it was definitely extraordinary. Superman underwear. A one-time item, used for 1 minute, you can gain superhuman strength, break the boundaries of the world and reach the super overlord level. Is 1 minute too short? No, is it so short? It hasn't started in a minute, right? Although some people complain that Superman's underwear is too short, at least it is a treasure that can allow him to exceed the upper limit of his strength. Dinghaizu. Holding Dinghaizu, you are not afraid of the waves of the sea. P.S. Mom no longer has to worry that I can't swim. Ah, this, system, are you serious? System. Forget it, let's use it. Even though he said this, Carl's mouth didn't even know where it was cracked. Dinghaizu. How widely used it is in this world full of seas. You can hunt for treasure under the sea, and you can ignore the waves and natural disasters on the sea. Moreover, this is a legendary artifact. Even if the demon fruit power holds it, it should not be afraid of the harm of the sea. How do you say it? 666 is on the public screen. After looking at the first 2 items, he set his sights on the last one. He touched his chin and saw that the 9th grade waste elixir should be of the elixir type. Waste pill. Contains violent spiritual energy. After taking it, people will lose all their intelligence and attack unconsciously. However, due to the limitations of the current world, the upper limit of its strength is only the overlord level, and its existence time is 10 minutes. This can be an unexpected surprise. Okay, I'm satisfied. Let's see what the second main task is. The main task 1 has been completed, now open the main task 2 module. Main mission 2. Make the Lux family become the first family on the sea. The mission reward is an unspecified template lottery. This task is difficult to say, neither difficult nor difficult. This family pack does not include celestial dragons. From what aspects is it verified? The cold voice of the system came out. Comprehensive ranking based on strength, influence, and money. The current host family ranking is 27th. The system's voice disappeared after it was transmitted, but this sentence gave Carl a big shock. Unexpectedly, there are 26 families in the pirate world that are stronger than him now. You know, counting him and Charlotte Linlin, there are already 2 admiral-level masters. There are only 20 celestial dragons in total. Whose are the remaining 7? It seems that the water in the pirate world is very deep. Forget it, I don't want to think about it anymore. Uranus alone, I haven't thought of any good way to deal with him yet. Take your time. After a short rest, he stepped on the ground and accelerated towards Cake Island. And at this time Wano-kuni, well. Carl. Charlotte Linlin felt a little trembling in her chest. She found that the life paper was beating, so she took out Carl's life paper, and saw that Carl's life paper had returned to its original white appearance, and was beating slowly. Charlotte Linlin could sense Carl through the life paper in front of her. It's flying this way. Clay. Hearing Charlotte Linlin's shout, Clay quickly ran over from the side. What's wrong with Mr. Linlin? Looking at Charlotte Linlin's happy look in front of her, it shouldn't be a bad thing. I'll leave the matter here to you. I'm going back to the cake now. After Charlotte Linlin finished speaking, she put the life paper back into her pocket. Okay, Master Linlin. Clay looked at the smoky battlefield. Leave it to Clay here. Dong dong dong. Charlotte Linlin walked towards the pirate ship on the shore with heavy steps, and Parasparrow and others quickly followed. The mission here has come to an end, and the rest can be left to Clay and the Fishmen army. Done, they don't need to be stationed here. With the departure of Charlotte Linlin, the scene suddenly became empty. Hurry up and take care of these. After watching Charlotte Linlin leave, Clay began to command the fishmen on the scene. In fact, at first he thought Linlin would accuse him because he was responsible for monitoring the situation on Wano-kuni, but unexpectedly it led to a rebellion. But fortunately, Charlotte Linlin did not punish him, which made him relieved. So he needs to do the things in front of him even more. Leave 1 Murloc army behind, and the remaining 4 will follow Master Linlin back to Cake Island. 100,000 people are a Fishman army, and the number who came to Wano-kuni this time is 500,000. Now we are just cleaning the battlefield, and the remaining 400,000 are of little use. Rather than letting them do nothing here, it would be better for them to escort Lord Linlin back to Cake Island. Yes, Lord Carl. The Fishman army leader immediately bowed and said. 4 of the 5 legions followed Linlin's ship in an instant. This next mess is all caused by yourself. So he quickly repositioned his eyes on Wano-kuni. Who knows if there are any samurai rebels on it now? Just in case, let's keep an eye on it. Chapter 172. Marine's big move. Just as Carl continued to move towards the New World, a major earthquake hit the naval headquarters. Next, Marshal Marine will be replaced by Kong. Inside the naval headquarters, personnel sent by the world government stood at the front desk and recited the policies of the 5 elders. Everyone in Marine below is not surprised, because Marshal Hill has passed away. No matter what aspect you consider, Kong is the best candidate to take over as Marshal. Bang bang bang. Everyone present began to applaud enthusiastically, with smiles on their faces. Now I would like to invite Kong to the stage. As soon as the world government official finished speaking, Kong straightened up and walked to the podium. The responsibilities of Marshal Marine will be taken over by Kong. There was another burst of applause from the audience. After Kong took off the martial uniform and some things, the world government officials stood back on the podium again. We will announce to the public that Garp is the one who defeated Rox and will receive the honorary title of Marine Hero. There was another burst of applause from the audience. It's not like Marine didn't know that joining forces with the pirates to spread the news of Rox's defeat would be detrimental to Marine's next actions. Although Marine's reputation is already very bad now, he cannot be allowed to continue to be so bad. And as the news of Garp's victory over Rox spreads, it will probably attract a wave of young people who want to join Marine. The final personnel assignment is now made, appointing Garp as the 3rd Marine Admiral. I don't agree. Garp immediately stood up and objected. The scene was cold. Everyone in Marine looked at Garp, who stood upright. No one dared to speak first. The world government official said with a livid face, Garp, don't you obey the orders of your superiors? Garp crossed his chest and laughed. I accept the title of hero. Don't mention the Marine Admiral matter. He waved his right hand and walked out of the venue regardless of the expressions of the world government officials. This, as his good friend, Sengoku naturally knew Garp's mentality and quickly stood up to smooth things over. How about we stop here today and talk to him afterwards? When Kong saw the conversation, he immediately picked it up. That's all for today, forget it. Sengoku stepped forward and took the admiral uniform from the world government official, and then walked out of the door. He wanted to persuade Garp. I don't know, they're recruiting. Kong approached the world government official at this time and whispered. Because of the 3 years of fighting in New World and the Battle of the Valley of the Gods, Marine casualties were close to 100,000. This is already 2/3 of Marine's total combat power, which has seriously affected Marine's ability to fight evil crimes around the world. The 5 elders have already made proposals, but now Marine's strength has seriously declined and is no longer enough to threaten them. The conscription matter was naturally passed. He took out the documents on the side and handed them to Kong. This is a new mission for 5 elders. I hope you won't be like Garp. The official handed the documents to Kong and left. Kong didn't care about his departure, but directly opened the document in front of him. The first document written on it was the document agreeing to the conscription plan, as well as the issue of pensions for Marine soldiers killed and injured in the Bone of God. Naturally, the world government will not treat Marine too harshly, because currently, Marine is still their #1 violent organization to maintain balance on the sea. The strength cannot be too strong, but it cannot be too weak either. After Kong received the document, he ran to the staff headquarters and spread the news of Marine's recruitment throughout the world. They will speed up the recruitment of Marine's new blood next, because the new world is already in chaos, and because the video of rocks attacking the Valley of the Gods has been circulated. Most of the young people in the world now have to go to sea to become pirates. Therefore, the pressure on Marines from all over the world has suddenly increased. There are 20 or 30 new pirates formed every day, and this does not include some countries on the Grand Line route. According to the information he received, New World had already been reduced to a mess. Even if Newgate, Charlotte Linlin, and Golden Lion returned to the New World organization, they immediately seized most of the territory. But there are still dozens of islands facing competition from pirates, and bloodshed happens every day. The battle has never stopped since the moment Rock's pirate was disbanded. This island is yours today, and it will be mine tomorrow. The inhabitants of many islands were massacred. It was impossible for him to let Shitai and the first half of the Grand Line experience such a scene, so he could only conduct conscription and use a large number of Marine soldiers to consolidate the 4 seas and the first half of the Grand Line. But it was impossible for him to recruit Marines from all over the world, so he could only recruit troops on a large scale to curb this pirate trend. While Marine was carrying out intensive actions, in a mysterious room in Marijoy, 3 elders knelt on the ground, looking at Lord I Am in front of them with fear. Tell me, how should I be punished? A disembodied voice sounded, frightening the 4 elders into kowtowing. Lord I Am, I'm sorry. Lord I Am, please spare us. Hearing the begging for mercy below, I Am was unmoved. Do you know how many days people have been dead on the Valley of Gods? His eyes burst into red light, and the next moment he roared angrily. Hundreds of people. Hundreds of celestial dragons died in the Valley of the Gods. Why didn't you die there? The 3 elders were so frightened that their bodies stiffened and sweated, and ripples even formed on their knees. Do you know what hundreds of celestial dragons mean? You idiots! Raise your head. A cold voice sounded, forcing the 3 elders to raise their heads. When he looked up, he saw a pair of red eyes. Deprive the 3 of you of 20 years of life. Im's eyes emitted red light, and the next moment the lifespan of the 3 elders in front of him was cut off by 20 years out of thin air. They watched their arms begin to grow older and their beards become whiter. They felt the essence draining from their bodies and breathed a sigh of relief. They knew that from this moment on they were punished. If it happens again, you don't have to come to me. After I Am finished speaking indifferently, he waved his hand. Several 5 elders looked at each other and stood up immediately. Lord I Am, we are retreating. Several people were trembling in their hearts until they walked out of the room. But looking at the absent Peter Saint and Satan Saint, everyone still couldn't help but feel a bit of panic in their hearts. If Lord Im's attack hadn't been too fast, the three of them might not have arrived here alive. Carl's strength is really too threatening. His strength seems to be better than Rock's, the long-bearded five elders Moss Saint said. Nasarang Saint can still feel Carl's doomsday cannon. Yes, but fortunately Carl is dead. It was this attack that directly caused Satan Saint to turn into nothingness without even a chance to resist, and not even his bones could be found. Chapter 173. Marie-Joy. Just when Carl came to Sabodi Archipelago, he looked up at Marie-Joy next to him. "You've already come, it's not good to leave empty-handed." Carl chuckled and flew up along the red mountain wall. He flew higher and higher, feeling the lack of oxygen gradually coming from the air. I really don't know how Fisher Tiger climbed up in the first place. Soon he was flying along the wall to the top. I don't know if it's because the celestial dragons feel that no one can come up from here, so there is no manpower to guard the edge of the continent. He walked in along the road easily. Unleashing observation hockey, tens of thousands of wailing sounds were soon felt. These sounds come from underground. His face began to look serious, and he knew that these were slaves captured by the celestial dragons. Following the recent wailing sound, I looked ahead and saw a moving road on the ground. But according to his perception, there are countless slaves walking under this road, so he feels that the road above is moving. Celestial dragons is really not a good thing. Anyway, so many people have died in the Valley of the Gods, so I probably don't mind dying a little more. After Carl finished speaking, he quickly flew inside. But when he flew through the passage, he saw a very modern room. He stopped in shock. Are they from the same hometown? Thinking that they might be from the same hometown, he quickly arrived at the door of the ultra-modern house. "Ah! Kill me if you can. Let my brothers and sisters go." Hearing the wailing from inside and the unfolding of observation hockey, his face began to look ugly. What kind of fellow countryman is this? This is the testing ground for celestial dragons. The one with wings, and there must be the Lunarian clan. Thinking about it this way, in the original work, the Lunaria clan should have been moved to Punk Hazard after kidnapping Vegapunk, and were accidentally rescued by Kaido. Then the new Shichibukai in the original work should be made from their genes. Under his careful perception, there were 12 people in the Lunaria family in front of him. Bang! Carl kicked the iron door, flying in. Who? Shua. Carl's speed was so fast that the guards at the door instantly turned into a ball of blood mist, and they didn't even have time to scream. It only took him 2 or 3 minutes to arrive at the experimental site. Hundreds of guards had fallen in the laboratory, and the smell of their blood began to fill the air. "I don't know who you are. Can't you come in and out of here at will? Leave quickly." As soon as he entered the laboratory, a researcher in a white robe ran up to him and accused him. However, looking at Carl's huge body, he was still a little scared and just stood at a distance. Carl picked his ears and said impatiently, "Has anyone ever said you were annoying?" "What?" The researcher in front of him had never seen such an arrogant person before, but the look on his face in the next second was fixed at this moment. On the left and right sides, there were 2 huge bricks composed of golden light spells. They suddenly put their hands together and flattened him. Blood flowed down the gaps between the bricks to the ground. "Who are you?" At this moment, more researchers came inside. They looked at Carl in horror. "The person who wants your life." The other researchers inside did not escape Carl's vicious hands, waving huge bricks and smashing them into powder one by one. Fortunately, the sound insulation of the research institute is relatively good, and the sound did not reach outside. Kill all these researchers and release observation hockey to carefully search the research institute in front of you. If a lot of things here weren't different from what I had in mind, I would have thought this was a research institute on Blue Star. Oh, I wonder when I can go back. He walked towards the inside of the research room. According to his perception, except for the 12 Lunaria people inside, there is no other life breath in this research institute. Bang! A door was opened by a violent impact. Carl was the first to break into a room where the Lunarians were being held. Damn it! What else do you want? The Lunaria clan member in front of them showed an angry look. Looking at his face, you could tell that he must be quite old. Who are you? But the next moment, this Lunaria clan member showed doubts, because he had never seen Carl's face after being locked up here for so long. Carl said straight to the point. Are you from the Lunaria tribe, right? I am. What's wrong? Have you thought of any new method? The Lunaria tribesman in front of him showed an arrogant face because he knew that no matter how he begged for mercy, he would be met with painful torture in the end. Rather than humble and succumb, it was better to face it calmly. It was because of this that the last 12 Lunarians were tortured to death, and when Kaido was captured, only one Jin was left. Carl said calmly, "I am not a lackey of the world government, I am a pirate." The middle-aged man in front of him said with a smile, "Is this your new trick? Do you think it would be interesting to let me escape from here and then catch me back? What, am I right?" Looking at Carl, who was still indifferent in front of him, he finally felt something was wrong. He suddenly sat upright and sniffed the air gently. The middle-aged man suddenly opened his eyes and carefully looked at the tall figure in front of him. "The smell of blood, what you said is true." His face was full of disbelief, and the smell of blood in the air was not just from one or two people, but from dozens or hundreds of people. Right now, he probably wasn't worth killing so many people just to watch him escape and catch him again. He struggled to stand up and wanted to walk outside. He wanted to see if it was true. "What do you have to deserve for me to deceive you?" he said and looked up and down at the middle-aged man in front of him. "I didn't realize it when I was sitting inside, and I never thought that after this middle-aged man stood up, his height actually reached his chest. It seems that he is about 5 meters tall. Are all members of the Lunaria family that tall?" The middle-aged man stumbled out of the door. What caught his eyes was blood all over the ground, and the blood on the ground formed blood stains one after another. He turned to face Carl and knelt down. "My lord, if you rescue me and my people, we will serve you as our lord for life." The Lunaria tribe started with hundreds of thousands of people, but now only a dozen people are left. He is the oldest among all the imprisoned Lunalia tribesmen, and the desire to multiply and grow his race is engraved in the hearts of every tribesman. In order to survive, even if you sacrifice your loyalty, you will not hesitate. It is not difficult to understand why Jin in the original book regards Sanji as one of his own tribesmen, because only his tribesmen can naturally play with fire. Okay, time is limited. If you want to release your loyalty, you have to survive first. After Carl finished speaking, he walked towards other rooms. The Lunarian behind him pondered for a while and then suddenly followed. Because no matter what, the only way to have a future is to go out. Now he can only hold on to Carl's life-saving straw. Chapter 174. Save the slaves. Again an hour later, sitting in the cafeteria of the research room, watching the 12 Lunarians eating crazily in front of him, Carl lit the table impatiently, making bursts of noise. He also didn't expect that the 12 Lunarians in front of him didn't know each other. "My lord, my name is Albert. My lord, my name is Tim. My lord." Before he could finish speaking, Carl quickly reached out to stop him. "I realize that you haven't figured out the situation yet. Don't they know that the longer they stay here, the greater the risk of exposure? Or do they simply not know that Marie Joy is now home to the celestial dragons?" Albert was a little worried and opened his mouth. He was afraid of offending the mysterious man in front of him. If this mysterious man abandoned them, they would never get ahead again. Carl looked at the expression on the old man in front of him and knew what he was thinking. "Do you know that the celestial dragons are in charge of Marie Joy now? If you stay here for a long time, you will be discovered." The old man in front of him immediately showed an incredible expression. "What? How could it be? Marie Joy is obviously our home. They have lived in this institute since they were young, but when they were young, their elders told them that Marie Joy is their real home, and if they escape, they must come to Marie Joy." "Wait." Carl was a little confused now and stretched out his hand to interrupt him immediately. "You said Marie Joy is your home? But Marie Joy has been ruled by the celestial dragons for 800 years. When Carl heard these words, he thought for a while and asked again, "Have you lived in this institute since you were born?" After looking at the 12 people in front of him and nodding slowly, he slapped his forehead with one hand. It turns out that they have lived in the research institute since they were young, so naturally they don't know what kind of changes have happened outside. Carl immediately stood up and said to them seriously, "No matter whose home Marie Joy is, we are now in the heart of the enemy. If we are discovered, both you and I will be in danger, do you understand?" Albert stood up immediately after hearing this. "Understood, sir, we can leave now." Albert is well aware of the current danger. Since they are now in the heart of the enemy, They have to escape first before they can consider the next thing. If they are discovered, then all the efforts made by this adult will be in vain. Just understand. Come with me. Carl took the lead and walked towards the outside of the research institute. Behind him, the well-fed Lunaria tribesmen followed closely. When we came outside, the weather was still very sunny and only more than 2 hours had passed. Therefore, the affairs of the institute have not been discovered by others, and the importance of the institute itself is not as high as other projects. Sir, what should we do now? Albert looked at the gorgeous palace in the distance and already knew that Mariejoy was no longer their home. Because under the influence of the elders, Mariejoy should be a simple building, and the magnificent appearance is obviously different from what the elders described. Who would have thought? Carl shook his head after looking at them. What could these old, weak, sick and disabled people in front of him do? You guys just wait there, I'll take a walk inside. If I haven't come out within an hour, you will fly down the cliff here. After Carl said these words, he disappeared from everyone's eyes. Clan leader, what do you say? The other Lunaria people looked at Albert quickly. After a simple recommendation at the dinner, they elected the oldest Albert as the leader of the Lunalia clan. Wait! Carl's speed was extremely fast, and it was getting dark, which brought him great convenience. It's really dirty. Carl looked at the prosperous Mariejoy in front of him, but he didn't know how many wailings came from behind. Tap tap tap. He was walking on a deserted path. There were several guards in front of him guarding the portal, which was one of the portals leading to the underground. And under this portal, everyone must have guessed it. Thump thump. The two guards rolled their eyes and fell to the ground. A giant mouth seemed to appear on the ground beneath their feet, slowly devouring their bodies, and there were bursts of chewing sounds. Ryushing's template is so easy to use, it can do anything with murder and arson. What he used was the earth element from Ryusei. The several major elements that Ryusei has mastered are far more powerful than the Logia devil fruit. It is indeed worthy of the manga world. His body walked straight forward, and a crack appeared in the wall, which slowly expanded into a portal. After he walked into the portal, it began to gradually heal until it disappeared. As soon as he walked into this dungeon, he was greeted by all kinds of wailing, crying for help, shouting, every kind of sound he could think of appeared here. There was a disgusting smell in the air. There are tens of thousands of slaves imprisoned in the dungeon. Some of them are civilians, some are pirates who commit all kinds of crimes, and some are children of noble families in the kingdom. But no matter who they are or what their status is, they are all slaves in front of the celestial dragons. Who is that person? Hey, who are you and why are you here? Wait, I think I've seen him before. Carl walked slowly in front of everyone and passed by them. When he heard that someone recognized him, he paused and slowly turned his head. Are you Mr. Carl? Who is it? Who is it? A slave next to him who had been captured for several years asked loudly. And this man shouted with tears of excitement flowing from the corners of his eyes. It's Carl, Rock's vice captain. What? Carl? Following this roar, many people in the cell ran to the railings and looked at Carl in the corridor. It's really Lord Carl. Master Carl, I am Sheer. Hearing the voice coming from the front left, Carl looked over. It was a blue-skinned fishman, who was Jinbei's father. Carl looked at the former and asked seriously, how did you end up here? Sheer showed a happy expression. Sir Carl, you don't know that since the news came that you died in the Valley of the Gods, the celestial dragons and slave traders have been capturing the fishmen, and I was the last to be caught here. Sheer said as he slapped the cage in front of him vigorously. Carl did not expect that there would be such a big response after the false news of his death spread. Even the fishmen who were protected by him have become slaves who are captured and sold at will. I can't imagine what the forces under his will think. It seems that he must speed up his pace to return to the new world and declare his sovereignty. No matter where you are from, I will only say the next words once. Carl looked around. I will open your prison and show you a way out. Whether you want to go or stay is up to you. Gold element. He maximized the power of the gold element, covering all the chains and prison doors on the 3 underground floors. Under his control, in just 3 seconds, the chains and prison doors turned into molten iron and merged with the ground, and everyone was liberated at this moment. Ouch, finally free, thank you Lord Carl. The people who were released cheered each other, hugged each other, and some even looked for their families. He also used ice elements to extend a bottomless slide on the edge of the red line. Sun-destroying cannon. He turned around, clasped his hands and launched a fierce attack in the direction he came from. Boom! With everyone's shocked expressions, a long ditch dozens of meters wide appeared in front of Carl. The end of this long ditch is a huge slide made of ice elements. The way out has been opened. It's up to you whether you can leave or not. After Carl finished speaking, he turned around and left. Chapter 175. Destroying Marie-Joy. After Carl left, violent roars came from the dungeon. Tens of thousands of slaves began to move towards the path Carl opened for them. What happened? Someone come quickly. Because Carl's doomsday cannon made a very loud noise, it attracted the surrounding guards. The arriving guards saw people pouring out of the dungeon and stepped forward to stop them. You are all not allowed to run, stand still for me. No matter how the guards called, no one stopped. You son of a bitch, you dare to block my way. Brothers, let's fight with him. All kinds of strange ability users and guards started fighting. For a time, the long road was raging with war, and a large number of flames began to burn. There was a louder noise, and the sound was directly transmitted to the place where the 5 elders lived. What happened outside? Listening to the sounds coming from the room, the guard on the side replied. Report to Lord 5 elders that the slaves have defected and have been sent to deal with it. Okay, step back. The 5 elders inside didn't think slave defection was a big deal. Slaves defected every year, but what he didn't expect was that the scale of the slaves' escape this time was so large, and the guard in front of him only heard a few words about the slaves' escape and didn't pay much attention. As for why the 5 elders did not release the observation hockey envelope, it is because on Marie-Joy, there are many places where celestial dragons live. Celestial dragons are not all idiots, and many families have strong ones. Therefore, although there is no explicit regulation, everyone has a tacit understanding with each other and will not release observation hockey wantonly on Marie-Joy to explore other people's secrets. But Carl didn't end there. Who, according to his perception, the strength of the guard in front of him was probably barely enough at the vice admiral level. I am your uncle, who else am I? Carl didn't give him a chance to resist at all. If he couldn't quietly win the vice admiral level with his current strength, then he would have been in vain. I still feel a little distressed. He stuffed the useless elixir that he had extracted from his system into his mouth. He carried his clothes and flew into the air. After standing there for 2 or 3 minutes, he could clearly feel that the man in his hands was beginning to radiate heat, and then he threw it directly towards the innermost part of Marie-Joy like a javelin. There should be a lot of good stuff from celestial dragons. This time it's my turn. He released observation hockey and flew over to explore the celestial dragon's residence. On the other side where he landed, the 12 people from the Lunaria clan were all frightened into cold sweats when they saw the huge attack passing in front of their eyes. Before they could slow down, the sound of violent running could be heard from the long ravine in front of God. Crack, crunch. Then they discovered that at the end of the ravine, a slide made of ice appeared at some point. The slide went through the sky and the other end fell on the sea. Patriarch, did that adult do this too? Should we go first? Looking at the eager tribesmen in front of him, Albert slowly shook his head. If you don't want to leave, please wait. But at this moment, the first batch of people running over jumped down the slide without even saying hello to them. Woohoo, liberated. I am demon fruit power, what should I do if I go down? As more and more people came, demon fruit power gradually began to appear. They came to the edge of the cliff and looked at the sea below, filled with fear. Don't worry, everyone, our fishmen will bring you safely to the land. Which is the demon fruit power? Sheer was followed by hundreds of fishmen. Looking at the Fishman brothers in front of them, they suddenly showed joy and looked for them one after another. They hugged each other and jumped down the slide. Boom boom boom. As more and more people jumped down the slide, the roar in the distance became closer and closer. It was the fighting between the resisting people and the guards. They are the last bastion for this group of people to jump down the slide. Fortunately, the news has not spread more widely, so there are not many guards coming. On Carl's side, he arrived at the first celestial dragon's residence. Is there a strong person inside? It seems that the celestial dragons are hidden deeper than I thought. Just at the door of the residence, he felt a faint sense of danger coming from inside. The strength is definitely inferior to him, but if he fights the celestial dragons inside, he will not be able to continue the theft plan. Boom! Bang! Just then, there was a huge roar in the center of Marijoy. Under his observation, several figures appeared among the dozens of mansions in front of him, heading towards the center. Fortunately, he fed the waste elixir to a guard in advance, which caused such a big commotion that it directly attracted these strong men. At this time, he began to release observation haki unscrupulously, breaking into one treasure house after another. Collected the huge gold treasure and devil fruit inside. However, his movement was too loud and attracted some guards. Bang! Snapped. Wielding the huge golden brick, he kept slapping the enemies appearing in front of him. Ouch! In the center of Marijoy, the person who had eaten the waste elixir kept roaring, and his power became stronger and stronger. All kinds of gorgeous palaces visible to the naked eye were destroyed by his force. Dozens of golden lights flashed around them. They must be the real guards of Marijoy. But he knew time was limited. I don't want to experience it again. Carl didn't want to experience it again, being besieged by powerful men of multiple levels and above. He also understands the principle of giving up when something is good. Moreover, we have already collected a dozen celestial dragons' palaces in front of us, so we might as well not go to the remaining ones. A clone made of pure energy was left in place, and the real body was already flying in the direction where he first landed. Bang bang bang. The energy of the clone he left behind was not much to begin with. After 3 to 5 minutes of attacking, the energy clone had dissipated in the air. Quick, save Lord Celestial Dragons. Call the doctor quickly. After Carl's energy clone left in place was dispersed, a large number of guards rushed into the palace and began to treat the celestial dragons who had fallen to the ground. But they were all in vain. Carl didn't hold back, and basically no one could survive without him. When Carl flew to the previous research institute, he immediately saw Albert and others waiting there. Come with me. When he passed by, he did not stop, but slowed down a bit. Albert and others looked at the adult flying past, and quickly spread their wings to catch up. When I came to the broken slide, I saw that no one was coming out of the mainland, so I crushed the slide in front of me and flew towards the sea. They ran away, but the celestial dragons above Marijoy once again met with massacre.